Chapter 161. Axe Mark. Because the mark is called the Mark of Chaos, Renly once named the power generated by the mark the Power of Chaos. Originally, he thought that this kind of power could not be controlled. Just like its name, it was a mysterious and ever-changing existence. But I didn't expect that when that kind of power is integrated into a person's body, it will evolve into that kind of strange seed? Then this kind of seed can be recalled by the mark? Renly, who was hiding in the corner of an unmanned cabin and sitting back, stared down at his left wrist. The edge of the black and white double arc reverse cross pattern that originally existed there now has more redness due to the previous fever. A small axe symbol surrounded by a circle, grey in color, was quietly revealed at the edge of the wrist. As the boy looked at it, grey mist seemed to be rising outward. Is the birth of this thing an exception? Renly wasn't sure. He had touched the symbol that appeared quietly with his hand before, and then suddenly felt some memory images and a strange and pure thought. It seemed to be the gloved bird he had let fly in the high garden, and it seemed to be there is a bit of instinctive spirituality in the seed of power. That spirit is still quite resistant to itself. However, this resistance suddenly disappeared later, and Renly felt as if the spirit had adapted to his existence, or in other words, seemed to ignore him. Therefore, when he touched it again, he did not feel any feedback from the spirit, but instead heard a sentence. But if the war doesn't go well, Roderick, you have to chop off my head before the enemy does. A hazy sentence emerged in the bottom of his heart, causing the boy sitting against the linen bag in the corner to squint his eyes unconsciously. He was in an unmanned cabin, surrounded by folded grey linen bags, and the smell of wheat and bacon filled his nostrils. His sensitive hearing allowed him to faintly hear the noise in the port outside the cabin, telling looking at where he is at this moment. He is still in the harbour area of Pike Island. The previous change in his left wrist and the sudden gaze made him run away quickly. Although the Ironmen began to search soon after, they did not find that the boy had already hid in the bottom of a merchant ship anchored in the corner of the port. So even though the search team passed by continuously, no abnormality was found. Finally, when night fell, Renly climbed onto the unmanned ship and hid in what seemed to be a merchant ship warehouse. Then, he discovered this series of changes. Who is Roderick? What does this mean? Renly had some guesses, but he didn't have time to pay attention to this at the moment, because he discovered that after his fingers touched the axe mark, the changes that occurred were not just feeling something, but also another feeling. That is sticky. The viscosity caused by the grey mist rising from the surface of the axe mark. This feeling was like the smoke visible to the naked eye turned into substance and stuck to the pads of his fingers when he touched it. Renly therefore tried to lift his fingers, and then he saw the smoke rising up, and eventually he was dragged away from the axe mark. The mark on his wrist was no longer smoky, but the index finger of Renly's right hand was covered in a grey mist as light as fire. Ancient Road. Renly looked thoughtfully at the thing burning quietly on his finger. His fingers were wrapped in flames, but there was no special feeling. However, he could faintly feel that the flames were exuding bursts of evil aura. Is that killing? Is it desire? Is it violent? Or, plunder? After observing for a while, Renly tried to rub the thing on the linen bag leaning behind him, and the grey flames adhered to the surface of the bag and burned. It just looked like it was burning, but in fact it didn't have any impact on the bag. It just stuck there and floated silently, which looked so weird. Cannot affect dead objects. After confirming this, the boy raised his finger to scrape the thing back. Then he glanced around and focused on a sneaky mouse hiding in the corner of the bag not far from the cabin. At this time, the sky outside was dark, an array of moonlight shrouded in through the narrow window of the cabin, and the mouse was twitching its nose at the edge where the light could not cover it. It didn't look very afraid of people, but Renly got up and tried to get closer, but still scared it away, but it didn't go out of sight. Renly then took out a hard-dried fish from a wooden barrel not far away, stuck the flame in his hand on it, and then threw it towards the wooden floor shrouded in light. A piece of dried meat wrapped in grey flames burned quietly under the cool light. The boy hid in the corner and watched silently. Soon after, he saw the mouse running over furtively, and then as if he didn't care about the fire, he bit his mouth on the dried meat. The flames suddenly rushed into the mouse's mouth, but the mouse continued to hold the dried meat with its two small forelimbs, rolling it and chewing it, but before it could finish the hard dried meat, his movements suddenly paused, and then he raised his pointed head and let out a squeaking sound. After that, the rat, which was as big as an adult's palm, began to run around the warehouse frantically, and used its claws and mouth to constantly tear and scratch the linen bags in the warehouse, looking extremely arrogant. Watching all this quietly, Renly hugged his chest and touched his chin, his eyes narrowed slightly. It was obvious that this grey flame could affect the target's thinking, but the behavior of the rat seemed different from that of Gu Dao. Different cognition? Or is it because of race? Does the flame still have the ability to counter? Is it the same effect as the bird at the beginning? Thinking about this, Renly thought of something he felt when he touched the fist mark before, so he stretched out his fingers to touch the mark on his left wrist again. Haven't you found the boy yet? A questioning word quietly emerged from the bottom of his heart. It was not a sound, so there was no emotion contained in it, but at the same time as this word emerged, Renly seemed to see a thin and angular face. That was the black-haired middle-aged man he looked at the port. What a bunch of trash! The second word emerged later, but it was obviously not in response to the first sentence. Maybe he doesn't want to see us yet. Obviously, the connection between the wrist mark and the will of the ancient path allows Renly to have the ability to read the thoughts of its host, but compared to the beginning, this reading is now not 1, but 2. Squeak! The moisture from the sea may not be very friendly to my teeth. The Harlow family really has ideas. Squeak! War! Squeak! Touching his left wrist with his fingers, and looking at the grey-haired mouse in the warehouse that ran around but didn't make much noise, Renly can now be sure that the flame that was fed to the mouse before was indeed the ancient path. Because except for the lack of the initial memory flashback, everything he felt from the other party was exactly the same as the first bird. So, looking down at the small mark attached to the corner of the big mark on his wrist, Renly fell into deep thought. He could vaguely sense that a stream of invisible and weak power was being transmitted along the unique connection of this thing, so he guessed that this mark would soon breed that kind of flame, or seed of the ancient path again. But what can this thing be used for? Chapter 162. No matter what the ancient seed can be used for, it seems to be of no use to Renly's current situation. In contrast, what he values more now is the mind-reading ability that comes with the axe mark. This ability seems to be less effective as the seeds spread more and more, because Renly cannot read multiple targets at the same time, nor can he control who the target is read, but for now, he is not troubled by this situation. The experiment resulted in 2 beings possessing the ancient path, but after Renly finished using the rat, he trampled one to death. So there is only one he can read now. Relying on this, he first determined the true identity of the middle-aged man who looked at him in the port area. The contemporary head of the Greyjoy family, the king of the Iron Islands who started a war and rebelled against the Baratheon dynasty, Balon Greyjoy. Then, I can read the other person's heart. This seems to be very beneficial to the entire war, but currently it is used by Renly as a convenient method to hide in the port. The opponent values him very much and mistakenly thinks that he is the son of the drowned god, so the relevant searches are basically done in person. Ask. So Renly, who knew the other party's detailed plan, no longer had to think hard about how to escape. Not only did he easily escape the Ironborn's capture, but he also successfully used this disguise to board a ship bound for the Great Continent. Wake Island boats. Why did King Balon let a child of the Gubular family come on our ship? Under the gloomy sky, the first mate of the brigantine asked questions as he stared at the short figure lying on the bow of the ship and tiptoeing towards the sea. Didn't the kid already tell you that his parents were anxious to summon him back to the corpse lake, so King Balon made it easier for him? The middle-aged captain with a beard replied and frowned. The Gubular family of the Lake of Corpses is a branch of the Gubular family of Warmer Point. The Gubular family of Warmer Point is one of the most influential lord families on Great Wick Island, which is one of the Iron Islands. The largest, most populous, and most powerful island. In other words, the Gubular family is so powerful that even the new king of the Iron Islands has to give them face. And this boy claimed to be a branch member of that family. This alone is not trustworthy, but the boy knew where their ship was anchored, the time they set sail, the name of the captain, their purpose, and even the code word for King Balon's contact with them. With such a precise understanding, naturally it would not be possible. It may be false. Most of the people on the Iron Islands are illiterate, and writing letters are not popular. Of course, because the child came without anyone to escort him, and due to some rumors in the port in the past 2 days, they still went to ask King Baron for instructions before leaving, but they couldn't find anyone. It was said that they had returned to Pike City temporarily because of something. Due to the fact that the mission could not be delayed for too long, they could only leave a message and hit the road immediately. However, they were still paying close attention to the boy secretly, but they did not take strict precautions against him. Being on the ship, they didn't think that a child could go anywhere, so if he was really a member of the Gubular family, it would be nothing. And if the child was the one the King of the Iron Islands wanted to find, then they would take it away. It's not too late to get it under control. Baron didn't reveal someone's true identity, so it's clear that these people don't know what someone is capable of. Therefore, they are destined to be disappointed. After providing him with delicious food and drink for several days, the captain of the ship woke up one day and suddenly found that the boy had disappeared. He searched the entire cabin area but could not find him. Soon after, a small boat chased him. The message brought by the clippers made them even more regretful. King Balon did not order a boy from the Gubular family to follow them to Great Wick Island, and the suspicious boy was basically King Balon's wanted criminal. There are many children with black hair and blue eyes in the archipelago. The Gubular family on Great Wick Island also have this characteristic. Therefore, although they had suspicions before, they were not sure. However, now that they know the exact information, the boy had disappeared, which made Captain Bearded very angry. Balon Greyjoy, who later learned of the matter, was even more convinced of someone's identity because of the mystery of the prophetic vision. Cancel the search. He immediately ordered, but inform the whole island that once the boy's existence is discovered, he will provide me with food and drink. Since he doesn't want to see us, let him go. With this order, he was not too worried. Balon believed that since the son of the drowned god had arrived in the Iron Islands, he would meet him, the king of the Iron Islands, sooner or later. Therefore, although he regretted not being able to meet immediately, the current war situation was tense, but he was not too worried. Put a lot of thought into this. Just cancelling the search did not bring much convenience to Renly. After learning that the other party was following him, although he abandoned the ship and jumped into the sea, he did not really leave. Instead, he followed the ship and took a hitchhiker, and finally succeeded. Arrived at Great Wick Island in the archipelago. Then he was ready to find a way to leave here. Although he realized that he seemed to have accidentally made a mistake, Renly did not stay to fool the idea. He had no demands on the Iron Islands, and he didn't think that the people here were all fools who believed what he said, so he didn't use this identity to influence the current war, which would be equivalent to dragging himself into the vortex of struggle. The purpose of Renly's trip this time was just to understand the truth. Now he has learned enough and even gained an extra benefit. So the most important thing now is to return to Highgarden quietly and be an adopted son. However, during the current war, the connection between the islands is normal, even quite close, but the communication between the islands and Westeros has been basically broken, so he hasn't heard of any opportunities in the past few days. So Renly decided to stay here first. The information communication between the islands is not so convenient, so although he was wanted on Pike Island, no one on Great Wick Island knew of his existence. Relying on this, Renly walked into a fishing village after landing, and relied on a silver coin obtained from the sea to exchange for the treatment of staying in a family here for a period of time. In fact, although the Iron people are cruel, this temperament is mostly for outsiders. As for their own people, they would not kill anyone they saw with dark intentions. The people of the Iron Islands were very united, and they even took good care of children. After all, the population of the islands was sparse, and children represented the future of this place. Renly lied that his elders were out to sea, and he was waiting for his parents to pick him up. An old Iron Man who took him in felt that the boy's elders were really brave, but he did not doubt anything else. So after drinking a bowl of hot fish soup, Renly was placed in a narrow compartment of a wooden house in the fishing village. The compartment had a bed made of straw and linen, and a narrow window nailed by a curtain. Other than that, it was very simple. After being properly settled, the sky outside was already dark. Because of the poverty, the owner of this place did not have candles or oil lamps, so the surrounding environment gradually became difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. The snoring of an old Iron Man couple could be clearly heard from behind the wooden wall of the compartment, while the boy in a large cotton jacket hugged his knees and leaned against the straw bed, squinting at the axe mark on his wrist that was once again emitting smoke. After stepping on the experimental mouse to death, the grey flame swallowed by the mouse quietly emerged, but Renly had tried it before and found that he could not put this flame back into the axe mark, so he had to put it in a shell and carry it with him for emergency use. However, at this time, another flame ignited on his wrist. Renly kept observing along the way and found that the process of condensation of the ancient road seeds was actually very slow, probably because there was only one host to provide nutrients. And he knew that at the normal speed, it seemed impossible for the new seeds to completely condense and form without 3 to 5 months. But now, he was thinking about it, but there were not many clues at present, so he did not think deeply about it. Instead, he habitually listened in the corner, yawned and fell asleep on the bed. He was very tired after a series of rushing and lying. Then for a period of time, the boy temporarily lived in this fishing village where there seemed to be no young people. On the surface, he learned how to use a short-handled axe from the old iron man who stayed with him to kill time, and secretly observed and tested the things on his wrist. Then he came to a conclusion, that is, in addition to the normal way of supplementing and forming, the seed of the ancient road can also be nurtured and formed by the power of chaos. In other words, as long as the axe mark is in the empty state, the onset of chaos will no longer cause him any trouble, but will only rush into the mark and then breed grey flames. This situation made Renly relieved, but another discovery not long after made his relaxed mood disappear. That day he went to the beach to visit his octopus son, but suddenly saw a familiar cat face on the sea. Chapter 163. The hunter boy wants to learn fishing from me, but his legs and feet can no longer dig in the mine. In the yard in front of the wooden house in the fishing village, an old man with grey hair squatted on the ground and said to an old woman next to him, "Maybe he wants to move here. You can clean up the house of Bud's house next door in the next 2 days. No one has lived in it for more than 10 years, so it needs to be cleaned. That kid is already over 60, why should he learn to fish? I have no choice but to learn. If I don't learn, I won't be able to eat." Who allowed him to marry so many concubines and pay taxes to pay off all his family property? If you want your son to live long, you have to marry more concubines. If you don't have a son to support you, who will care about you when you get old? You didn't take a concubine. Don't you have 3 adult sons? 3 sons are of no use. They all went off to fight. Halliage, Carrie, and Pilf. I will be satisfied if only one of them can come back. At least you had 3 sons. That's my seed health. Under the sunny sky, the 2 iron-born old men talked about their lives without any scruples. The black-haired boy squatting aside silently drank a bowl of fish soup and listened to all this. There was no useful information, but it was a relaxing experience for Renly, especially after running around continuously and thinking about his left hand for a long time. He had not lived such a quiet life for a long time. Looking back on the past, it seems that this kind of tranquility disappeared after leaving Storm's End. Thinking about it, he suddenly frowned, and then raised his hand to pull at his empty left shoulder. He didn't see anything there, but his hand clearly encountered an obstacle. While pushing, fleshy paws seemed to rest on the back of his hand, and he also felt a kind of furry warmth. "This is the black cat named Bael Ryan, an invisible but real cat," Renly confirmed. After leaving the Seven Sons copy, he found that the cat had disappeared, or in other words, after seeing its reflection in the water, he thought the cat had turned into some kind of ghost. He speculated at the time whether the black cat was also affected by the mark on his wrist and disappeared. However, there were not many clues, so he didn't think much about it. When he was living in the high garden, he always felt that there was someone next to him when sleeping, so he thought of the cat that turned into a ghost again, and even speculated that the cat might have transformed into an incompletely replaced animal state. See, not seen, but present. It's just that that kind of animal doesn't leave a reflection in the water, and it can also be touched. No matter how he groped, he couldn't touch the existence of any cat at all. So this question became an unsolvable mystery. Renly took it out and pondered it when he had time, but he didn't think much about it. Later, when he left Highgarden and stepped onto the battlefield, he had no time to think about such unimportant things. In his opinion, the continuous running around even made him forget the existence of the cat. It wasn't until he saw the reflection of the cat again at the beach 2 days ago, and it wasn't until he was hit by the air that he was sure that the black cat named Bael Ryan had indeed become as invisible as the replacement animals. It just seems a little special in comparison. Because of the scales on its chest? Renly guessed. There is a scale mixed with gold and grey between the hair on the black cat's chest. Renly can clearly see it through the reflection, and thinks that the scale may be made from the dragon eggshell he lost. And he didn't forget that the dragon eggshell and Lya had the same origin. But he didn't know exactly how. Not only could the invisible black cat not see it, but it could also make no sound. Renly even hoped that his psychic heart would take effect here and understand the heart of the black cat. The result was also unresponsive, not as good as his octopus son. I don't know if it's because the black cat has no desire to communicate with him, or because he's in a special state and can't communicate. For the same reason, Renly couldn't understand how the cat came to be in front of him. You know, he was diving into storms along the way. Even if the cat followed him out of the high garden, it would be impossible for him to follow him. This is another unsolved mystery. Subconsciously chewing a piece of fish meat that was fresh and not fishy in his mouth, Renly was so preoccupied with his thoughts that he didn't even realize that ripples were forming on the surface of the bowl of fish soup he was holding. It was obviously being touched by some strange pet that he pushed off his shoulder. While he was eating secretly, the two old men squatting next to him were still talking, and they also didn't notice this special situation. I really hope King Balong can win the war, so that those younger generations don't have to suffer like us anymore, mining and fishing all day, fishing and mining, and have to be fooled by the merchants from the Green Land. The old man drinking fish soup chattered, and finally looked at the boy beside him. Little Rob, are you leaving today? Renly, whose thoughts were interrupted by the words, came to his senses. He spat out a fish bone in his mouth, then nodded and said, yes, the appointed time has come. If I don't go, I won't wait for me. In fact, he finally found an opportunity to leave here, so he was ready to leave, but he would not tell this old man. Then go quickly. The grey-haired old man nodded, don't keep our good king waiting, or you will suffer. He wasn't talking about the actual king, but a nickname. There is a popular saying among the Ironborn, he who owns a ship is not a slave, and another saying is that every captain is the king of his own ship. These proverbs confirm the special nature of sailing and ships in the Iron Islands. Therefore, fishing and sailing plunderers have a high status in the Iron Islands, while those who mine and farm are looked down upon. They are generally the work of the slave labor class, but when the slave workers were liberated by the former King Cullum Greyjoy, the Ironmen had no choice but to take action in person. During this period of stay, Renly felt many aspects of this special culture, and he also somewhat understood why the people here insisted on restoring the ancient roads all day long. Without him, life is too poor, the Ironborn are too poor, resources are too scarce, and the geographical location is too fucked up. Everything from all aspects converges into the unique ancient path of this race, rather than just nature. Therefore, throughout the history of the Iron Islands, although there were many rulers who wanted to abandon the ancient roads, none of them succeeded. After eating his last fish soup here, Renly left a few pearls he touched while diving a while ago in the cabin where he lived, and then left wearing the quilted linen top and trousers provided by the old couple. The old Iron Man in the yard behind seemed a little reluctant to leave the boy. He kept watching his back until he could no longer see him, then turned back and said to his wife with emotion, look at the momentum he has when he walks. And when he grew up, he became a well-known iron type. Little Rob is a good boy. The old woman was washing the dishes with a wooden basin at this time. She nodded in agreement and said, it's just that running around at such a young age is a bit too wild. What are they wild about? Our cubs in the Iron Islands can't be like those sheep in the Greenbelt. We are raised in a stone house and bleat and wait for people to feed them. What future can we have? The old man replied disdainfully, and then he was about to stand up with a cane. When he came, he suddenly saw a group of people hurriedly running towards him outside the yard, which made him sigh, and then he hurriedly tapped the old woman's knee with a cane. Get up quickly, Salt Tongue is coming. In fact, the old woman noticed him without calling him, so she hurriedly knelt down on the ground after her husband, and then said hello in a somewhat reserved manner. Hello, adults. Usually when the common people greet them like this, the drowned priests will open the seawater bags they carry with them, and then water them and bless them. However, this group of drowned people wearing rough linen robes and holding driftwood sticks did not act as usual. Return gift. The leader, an old man with grey eyebrows, patted the kneeling old man on the forehead and asked hastily, do you have a child living here? Little Rob. The old man replied, that's what happened. Sir, you ask this. Where is he now? Drowned man interrupted. Already gone. The old man replied, I went to Sealskin Point and said I was going to take a boat back to Old Wake Island. That kid is from Old Wake Island. These words made the group of more than 10 drowned people look at each other, and then they murmured to each other in low voices for a while. They seemed to be quite excited. The old man looked puzzled and vaguely guessed the identity of the little guy who had lived in his house for more than half a month. Normally, so he couldn't help but ask. My lord, what are you doing with little Rob? Don't call him by his first name. That young drowned man raised his eyebrows and was about to scold him, but the drowned man next to him grabbed him and shook his head. The leader, old Yanran, replied at this time, "That child is very important to us, old Eddie, maybe you have made a contribution." As he spoke, he picked up the seawater bag he was carrying, gave the two old men the blessing of sea salt, and left in a hurry with the group of drowned people, muttering something like "that woman really didn't lie." This left the two old men standing at a loss. "Isn't little Rob still the son of King Balan?" the old woman asked suspiciously. "King Balan has many sons, and I don't see how polite these drowned people are." The old man who came back to his senses hummed in reply, then stood up with a little effort, walked into the house with a walking stick. "Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, the big shots affairs have nothing to do with us. They also said they had merit. How many more days do you have to live? Is your credit useful?" The old man walked into the house and scolded, "I don't have time to think about these things. Why don't you think about what to eat for dinner? Fish soup, all day long I'm tired of drinking fish soup." Chapter 164. Renly didn't know that if he was a step later, he would be directly approached. However, he did not go far at this time. Instead, he squatted on a rock on the seaside outside the fishing village, staring at the brown-black octopus shaking its limbs in the water below him. Thoughtful. There was no contact, but he could clearly feel the special emotions radiating from the octopus: closeness, pride, frustration. The octopus following behind was always very close to the boy's presence. The frustration may be the emotion caused by the fact that the boy had been hanging around for a long time without being picked up, but the pride made Renly a little confused. He glanced around for a long time, and finally reluctantly discovered a special feature. "Has your body gotten bigger?" The boy unconsciously touched his chin, then rolled up his trousers and jumped down to pull the octopus out of the water. The smooth touch made him feel sick, but it did feel much heavier in his hands than before. "So you're still a kid?" Staring at the ugly thing in front of him that smelled like sea, he muttered, but in his heart he believed in another possibility. Initially, this octopus was alienated, but after alienation, apart from being able to intelligently take the initiative to express emotions with Renly, and following closely behind Renly, there is nothing special about it. Later, Renly had a sudden idea and fed it an ancient path seed, and then, in fact, nothing too special changed. Just through the axe mark, he could detect that this octopus occasionally attacked fish in the sea when it lived alone on the seabed. Its personality also became a little more violent, but it was not the same as the mouse it used to be. The arrogant appearance is completely different, but it still maintains reason. At this point, it seems that its enlarged size is most likely due to the feedback from the ancient path seed. After casually throwing this thing into the sea, Renly thought about it for a while, finally shook his head, stopped thinking about it, turned around and set off in the direction of his destination. The Ironborn couple who took him in thought Renly was going to Sealskin Point, but in fact his destination was a place called Pebbletown, east of the fishing village. There are ships preparing to set sail there at this time, heading towards a place called Seaside City in the riverlands of Westeros continent, and now there is another war taking place there besides Fairy Island. Pebbletown is located in the southeast corner of Great Wick Island, close to the coastline. The stone buildings in the town are crowded and messy. Except that they can clearly be seen surrounding a square castle, there is no plan at all. The people living here are basically fishermen, thousands of them. Walking on the muddy roads of the town, you can see old townspeople dressed as fishermen passing by one after another. Fishing nets and dried fish can often be seen drying on the roadside. The smell of sea fish lingers in the air and never goes away. After driving for almost an hour, Renly had arrived here. At this time, his appearance was not very impressive. The dark hair that had not been taken care of for several months had spread to his shoulders. The bangs on his forehead also intentionally or unintentionally blocked his unusually beautiful eyes. The clothes he was wearing were worn by the son of the old couple named Harrig when he was a child. They were simple and ugly, no different from the clothes of the fishermen here. "Excuse me, has Master Merlin's ship left?" After Wu Ziyi walked on the street for a while, he grabbed an old fisherman passing by and asked. "Anyone's doubts? We won't leave until early tomorrow morning," the old fisherman replied. Then he looked at the child alone and asked, "Where did you come from, little brat?" "He's from Thumb Village." Renly said the name of the fishing village where he lived before. "My father was recruited by Merlin to fight last time. I don't know what the situation is now. I want to find someone to help him." A message. The old fisherman nodded clearly after hearing this, and then pointed towards the north of the town. The boat is parked under Lord Merlin's castle. It's easy to find, but no one will come near it at night, boy. If you want to go, hurry up. Okay, thanks. Renly responded politely, then turned around and continued walking in the direction of the castle, but halfway through, his steps suddenly stopped. Because he saw a special situation on the street, or in other words, a person sitting there waiting to die. It was a man with ulcerated facial skin, breathing heavily, and obviously suffering from a serious illness. He was leaning against the wooden wall at the edge of the alley. He was wearing a washed white linen clothes, which looked as thin as summer clothes. There are fishermen passing by from time to time, but they all avoid the place where that person is, for fear of being infected by the disease he has. Erythroplakia. Renly recognized the disease that the other party suffered from. This disease is manifested in the skin being covered with extremely itchy red spots. After the patient becomes ill, the itching is unbearable, and he usually scratches hard, and then the wound becomes infected. Festering pus. The disease is not serious for children, but it can be fatal for adults. At this time, the person inside obviously will not survive tonight. With a thought, Renly took out half an orange given by the old woman who took him in before leaving, then took out one of the white shells he brought with him, dug out the fire inside and stuck it on the orange, and finally left. He went to the other party at the edge of the alley and handed over the orange. This is for you. Eat an orange before you die. The man obviously didn't expect that a child would dare to approach him. After hearing this, he was stunned for a while before he realized what was happening. However, he did not take the orange, but smiled weakly at him. They say you'll die. It's such a waste to eat this. Boy, you just eat it yourself. Normal people couldn't see Renly's fire. He had already confirmed this. Naturally, the person in front of him couldn't notice the abnormality on the surface of the orange. Then let's take half each. As if Renly didn't hear the patient's words, he broke the half orange into 2 halves and handed 1 half to the patient. Eat it. If you don't eat it, you won't be able to eat it again. This sentence made the patient who didn't want to eat hesitate for a moment, and finally carefully raised his hand with the same ulcer to try not to touch the boy's hand. Then he put the orange into his mouth and chewed it. The sweet and sour juice dispelled the bitter dryness in his mouth, and in a daze, it also slightly cheered up his originally depressed spirit. Thank you, child. Maybe because of these oranges, I can live another day. Hearing this, the boy looked at the man's barely smiling face and nodded. Good luck. I also hope that the drowned god will always bless you. The other party replied, then looked at the boy's back and pursed his lips as he turned away, feeling quite moved. But after a while, his mood was suddenly interrupted, because another person walked in front of him, blocking the sunlight. Did the boy talk to you? The hoarse female voice sounded strangely charming, but the strange gaze that came down from her head was very aggressive, which made the patient feel very uncomfortable, but he still nodded. Yes. What did you say? The other party asked again. The patient frowned when he heard this and said, he asked me how to get to Buck Village. Although he did not know the woman in front of him, she was obviously following the boy. As for the patient, he did not want to bring any trouble to the kind boy, so he lied. Unfortunately, the other party directly exposed his lies. You don't need to hide it for him. The hoarse female voice said, his target is not Buck Village. What are you talking about? I don't understand. The patient shook his head in denial. The other party did not respond, but knelt down. A delicate white hand holding a purple glass bottle with a thin neck stretched out from the folded cloak. He slowly waved it in front of the patient's ulcerated cheek, accompanied by a slight sigh. There was a sound of liquid sloshing, and a strange fragrance emanated from it. I said, what did he say to you? The hoarse voice was the same as before, but when it penetrated his ears, it seemed to hit the bottom of his heart. The patient's face instantly became stunned. In a daze, he murmured some words unconsciously. He said, give it to you, eat an orange before you die. Then let's take half each. Eat it. If you don't eat it, you won't be able to eat it again. Good luck. Chapter 166. Good luck. The patient's dull words were followed by panic. Renly, who was touching his left wrist while rushing to the roadside, frowned at this moment. His original idea was to experiment with the effects of ancient Tao seeds in different people's bodies, and to see if they had special effects on dying people, but he didn't want to do such an experiment and find a guy following him? And there are some special means. After pondering, Renly continued walking without turning his head to look, but the direction he was heading had unknowingly changed. After passing by a group of old fishermen who were handling their catch on the street, he took advantage of the cover of these people and quickly ran into an alley on the side. He used his dagger, got on the road, to poke the wall as a stepping stone and jumped over. The alley came to another narrow path. After a series of deft and decisive actions, Renly did not leave completely. Instead, he lay down inside the wall and stared at the road outside the alley. An old fisherman with grey hair and a tall body passed by, an old woman with a stooped figure passed by, and another fisherman passed by in a hurry. At this time, the residents of Pebbletown except for the elderly are children. Regardless of the children, the elderly are basically the ones who are old or have difficulty moving. Anyone who is slightly younger cannot be seen at all, because they have been recruited by the local lord. There was a war. And this also makes Renly's observation very clear. Although he couldn't really see it, he could understand from the patient's thoughts that the person following him was a woman wearing a cloak and with sharp eyes. This kind of person seems to be eye-catching enough even in a normal environment, let alone the current Pebbletown. Unfortunately, after observing for a long time, he didn't see anyone with such characteristics passing by the street, which made Renly feel puzzled. The man seemed to understand that he wanted to go to the Lord's castle here and not elsewhere. But the street in front is basically the most convenient route to get there. Normally, even if she wants to be more concealed in following her, she can't just let this street go and go somewhere else, right? The roads in this broken town are complicated, and if you wander around a few times, you might get lost. Seeing that no special person was passing by, Renly couldn't help but touch his wrist and feel it. He also didn't learn from the patient that the person appeared again, so he simply stopped wasting this time, turned around, jumped off the wall, and headed towards this place. Walk outside the alley. He didn't see that person, but Renly thought that he was out of sight of the other party. It would probably not be easy for him to find him again. But unless I give up the idea of going to the Lord's castle here, I'm afraid. There were a lot of thoughts in his mind. On the surface, Renly didn't know which side of the town he had turned to. He didn't ask passers-by. Instead, he just walked casually through the streets or alleys, and finally looked up. At first glance, he found that he had unknowingly left the main part of the town and came to the edge. This made him think about it for a while, and then suddenly decided to give up this opportunity and not take the boat. But, who is following behind him? King Balon of the Iron Islands is no longer searching for him, and besides that person, who else could be interested in him? Some drowned people aware of their existence? But there are no women among the drowned people. Thinking about it, he looked up at the sky and found that it was already late, so he climbed the wall and ran into an uninhabited house nearby. At present, a large number of people in the Iron Islands have gone to fight in the war, so there are countless vacant houses. Renly doesn't even know where he is at this time, but he doesn't think others can come to him. The mud house is simple, with a thatched roof and a fenced yard. There are several abandoned fishing nets and dried fish meat in the yard. The door of the wooden house is locked, and there are even industrious spiders weaving webs in the corners of the door. But there is a window boarded up on the side of the house. After struggling to open the wooden plank with a dagger, Renly climbed in through the narrow window. What he saw was similar to the fishing village house he lived in before. They were just as shabby and there was no food to speak of. But he ran in just to find a safe haven. He was going to leave here early tomorrow morning, so he didn't care much. There were some trivial noises on the window behind him, and then his calf was scratched a few times by a soft object. It was the black cat proving its existence, but Renly didn't pay much attention to it, and casually wiped the black cat just now. With a piece of dried fish meat found in the yard still at his feet, he walked to the simple bed in the corner of the house and sat on it. Then he continued to touch his wrist. There were 3 seeds spread at this time, one was the original source Balong Greyjoy, the other was the octopus in the sea, and the last one was the previous patient. Balong Greyjoy was currently living deep in the castle on Pike Island, constantly using ravens to communicate with the islands about the war. The octopus had nothing to care about all day long except wandering around. Renly paid special attention to the last patient at this time, and he found that the current patient's mind was not affected by the ancient way, or that he was only affected by some fighting spirit that was unwilling to die, rather than other thoughts of burning, killing and looting. Think about it, this is normal. A person who is almost dead and cannot even guarantee his own life has time to think about those useless things? But maybe this fighting spirit is also one of the components of the ancient road. Maybe this fighting spirit itself has restored the patient's physical functions. As he observed, Renly found that the other party's mind was becoming more active at this time, and he was not as decadent and desperate as at the beginning. At the same time, it might be the patient's illusion, or it might be true. The patient seemed to think that his weak body was slowly recovering some vitality. Renly couldn't be sure whether this was the feedback of the ancient road and was improved, because except for the original ancient road at the beginning, he didn't find any other ancient road seeds with spirituality. However, it is certain that this thing can make the dying person rejuvenate some spiritual vitality. After the experiment confirmed this, he stopped thinking about it, closed his eyes, and observed the surroundings with his sensitive hearing, and gradually entered a state of half-sleep and half-wakefulness. This is a new habit he has developed during this period of time. The breeze hit the wall, the waves were faintly audible, the insects chirped, the dogs barked, the chickens crowed, the mice squeaked. Until a night passed quickly, and a new sound disrupted the quiet and deserted everything, and also woke Renly up instantly. He heard the footsteps of a group of people, and they seemed to have a clear goal, which was the house he was in. The original owner of the house is back? This thought flashed through his mind, and Renly frowned, then quickly got up and climbed out through the narrow window, ready to slip away as soon as possible. But he didn't expect that he would be discovered as soon as he climbed out of the window, and then he heard a shout that seemed very excited. "Son of the drowned god! He's here, yes, it's him, I see him again." The voice sounded familiar, and Renly's first thought was this. He turned his head and saw a group of drowned people running towards him, and the tall shouter who made him feel familiar, Aaron Greyjoy. The Iron Leader who kidnapped him and Maegor. Chapter 167. Although far away from the battlefield, the islands were still not peaceful during the war, or it could be said that there was an undercurrent under the apparent peace. Balon Greyjoy, the king of the Iron Islands, called on the young generation of the entire island to go to the battlefield to participate in the war, but many of the old people left behind seemed more nervous than the participants. The Ironmen were fierce and cruel, but they valued their offspring very much. Now that most of their offspring were not around, they naturally could not relax. In this tense atmosphere, only the power of faith could make them a little calmer. In fact, the drowned people of the entire archipelago have been walking around the islands to comfort and preach recently, and they seem to be busy. The belief in the drowned god has been deeply rooted in the Iron Islands for thousands of years, but not all Icelanders believe in it devoutly. Some are pious on the surface, some are not pious on the surface, and some are pious in their hearts but not in their behavior. In addition to these, after countless years of infiltration, the Church of the Seven Gods in Westeros has also bred some believers on the island. The former Iron King, Aaron Greyjoy, was quite indulgent towards those people, and the drowned people could not do anything about it. But at the beginning of the new king's reign, they need to take this opportunity to try to drive those people away and let those misled compatriots convert to the right path. Those who do not convert will be beaten with sticks until they convert. In short, everything needs to be corrected and taught by the drowned people themselves. It's just that recently, a special news has distracted the busy drowned people. That is, in Great Wick Island, a group of people led by the drowned people priest, Saltung Soran, found the so-called son of the drowned god. Saltung Soran is a famous drowned man priest in the Iron Islands. He once claimed that the Ironborn originated from the drowned god's palace of water and was created by the drowned god in his own image. He also claimed that the Ironborn came from the depths of the ocean and were born with the right to rule all waters. This statement was questioned by many people, but also sought after by many people. However, for the drowned man class, Saltung Soran is most famous not for his words, but for being the first person to choose to stand on their side after those guys who claimed to be followers of the son of the drowned god suddenly arrived. Yes, on their side. No one has ever seen the followers of the son of the drowned god, but they suddenly appeared, and they suddenly emerged from the water in a large-scale fishing operation. As a result, they were enthusiastically sought after by the people as soon as they appeared, and the so-called statement that they were sent by the drowned god was also believed by many people. It's just that the people are seeking their mystery, but the original drowned people in the islands are quite repulsive to this, and many even think they are a group of liars. In this situation, the local drowned people originally planned to unite and expel those people from the Iron Islands, but they didn't expect that a traitor appeared among them in the middle of the process and disrupted this plan, and that traitor was Sauron the Saltung. Later, the situation was out of control. Relying on the magical origin, relying on the help of the traitor, and relying on the words that were too radical but popular compared to the contemporary drowned people, the followers quickly gained a foothold in the islands. Their influence became more and more obvious, and they seriously squeezed the living space of the local drowned people. And unlike the local drowned people who were scattered like a pile of loose sand, those followers were extremely united one by one, often acting in groups. When their companions were bullied, they all swarmed in, making it difficult for the local drowned people to resist. If it goes on like this normally, the two sides of the drowned people will one day break out into a bigger conflict, but it was precisely in this situation that the war broke out. The sudden war shifted the existing contradictions. Regardless of whether they were new or old, the entire drowned class began to preach and appease the people, and there were signs of easing relations in the process. However, this easing was completely wiped out after the news of the so-called son of the drowned god spread. The local drowned people generally believed that the new drowned people's claim that they came from more than 200 years ago was completely deceiving people, and the so-called son of the drowned god in their mouths was just a cover for their propaganda and preaching. However, at the moment, those people actually want to make this cover real? Obviously, the local drowned people cannot support those people to do so, because the drowned priests have always claimed that they are servants of God, and if there is really such a thing as the Son of God, wouldn't they have an extra Son of God king who rules the drowned people? Or like the false god sect in the Green Land, do those people want to create a bishop? This is absolutely intolerable. Countless local drowned people were indignant about this, and many drowned people were ready to call on all drowned people to go to Old Wyke Island to hold a prophets' meeting, and then eliminate the conspiracy of the enemy, and by the way, drive this group of people away completely. God's servants should be pious, equal, and wholeheartedly believe in the drowned God, and should not become the tools of ambition of some conspirators. Cod, black cod, sardines, skate, ice fish, crabs, and even lobsters. As far as the eye can see, the food on the long table in front of him is all fish, and the cooking methods are also very monotonous: fish stew, fish soup, fish stew. The only special thing is the black bread placed on a plate carved from driftwood. It has clear edges and corners and pure colors. It looks very solid without touching it. With one hand on his face and the other hand tapping the long table in front of him boredly, Renly felt a little toothache when he looked at all this. How could he, a Duke of Dragonstone and a member of the Baratheon royal family, become a so-called faith leader in the enemy camp? He raised his eyes and glanced at the three drowned priests in the sealskin tent here. Two looked very young and one looked very old. Their different looks gave them different temperaments. The same thing was that they were all standing at the long table. In front of him, his demeanor was either respectful or hypocritical. If Shen Ziyai feels that these foods are not to your taste, then I will send someone to notify the nearby Merlin family later and ask them to bring some other foods you like. Look, Renly hasn't moved for a long time. The old drowned man with long grey hair and wearing red, green, and blue coarse cloth said so. Under normal circumstances, the Son of God shouldn't need to eat, right? The childish voice was full of doubts, and it also seemed to be full of self-denial. However, neither the old drowned man nor the two young people, the drowned people, didn't care. When King Rhodes was alive, he also needed to eat, drink, and have diarrhea. A young drowned man from behind said, and that does not affect his holiness. But to hell with it, Renly rolled his eyes upon hearing this. He wanted to know if these people would feel sacred when they saw the excrement inside when they poured themselves chamber pots. But obviously these are a group of guys with funny minds. Maybe coming to this strange world has made them convinced of the existence of gods, or maybe they are mentally stimulated and something is not normal. It is more likely that they want to regain their past ambitions. Except for the old drowned man named Sauron, Renly has determined that the other drowned men are those who came more than 200 years ago. In short, when he was first surrounded by them, Renly had already confessed that he was not the son of the drowned god, but they just didn't believe it. Instead, they respectfully but rigorously brought him to the speech camp, and delicious food and drinks were served. Of course, they had actually used many methods to test the authenticity of Renly's identity before this. And then he was confirmed. There is nothing wrong with this, but there is an acquaintance of Renly in the drowned team, and the other party knows his origin and name, so Renly had no intention of pretending to be this magic stick from the beginning. At the same time, although he has many special abilities, he still needs to eat, drink, and poop. So the question is, would normal people think that a person who still needs to eat, drink, and even pee and sleep would be some kind of son of God? Unlike those previous names, this identity cannot be faked. Therefore, when he found himself besieged, Renly confessed that he had no idea what they were talking about, and he had no idea what the sons of the drowned god were. But I didn't expect that these people didn't care about it. Even the old acquaintance Yilun seemed to be out of his mind now, as if he was coming and going all day long. This seems to be beneficial to him, but Renly doesn't think that there is no possibility that his true identity will be exposed. No matter how ignorant the Iron Islands are, if it attracts the attention of a large number of people, his Baratheon family background will probably surface sooner or later. And he obviously has not forgotten that the people of the Iron Islands are currently at war with Baratheon. When that time comes, it may not be clear whether the divine status of the Son of God is more useful, or the head of the Son of God. Not surprisingly, Renly wanted to slip away, but so far he had little chance. As soon as this group of drowned people caused a stir, the local captains basically knew about the existence of such a famous person, and many people even came to watch at the beginning. Secondly, these people understand his abilities, or in other words, understand his abilities in the ocean, so although they are respectful, they take him very seriously in many aspects. The drowned people claim that the Son of God currently does not correctly understand his true identity, and he has obviously not inherited the memory of the previous son of the drowned god. Therefore, self-denial is normal, and he should be able to adapt to it after some time. Renly could only chuckle at this. The devout, the fanatics, the conspirators, the drifters, the dubious. This is everything he observed in the past 2 days. Although there were many drowned men who maintained true respect for his existence, Renly did not lose his mind due to the flattery of these people. He kept observing and found that not all of his followers from ancient times were respectful to him. His existence is absolutely certain, or perhaps only a few are pious. And why they act like this is actually very simple. Ambition. The so-called son of the drowned god seems to be very sacred to ordinary people, and some of the methods he possesses are also shocking. However, in the hands of ambitious rulers, he is nothing more than a magical tool. The situation of the drowned king in history is certainly possible. Because it has some special abilities and secrets, but in the final analysis it is just a tool that fools the people and was elected by the drowned people in troubled times. And what can be sacred about the identity of a tool? It's a pity that you are destined to be disappointed, Renly thought to himself. He couldn't figure out how these people found him. Logically speaking, his behavior should be very covert. He didn't hear anything from the axe symbol. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, he can't stay here and be the son of the drowned god. Regardless of his true identity, he has had enough of staying in this indifferent Iron Islands, and he doesn't want to stay for a long time. But, how to escape? Renly pondered as he knocked on the table. It was actually very simple to escape alone. Even if this group of people watched closely, they could not completely stop Renly from approaching the sea. After all, the faith of the drowned man came from the sea. But if he escaped like that, he would face the old problem again, that is, he could not swim back to the mainland by himself. And after his identity was exposed, it seemed not easy to fool people into taking a boat like before. Renly was a little absent-minded for a while, secretly feeling that he really made a mistake at every step. But then someone came to visit, which temporarily interrupted his thoughts. Aeron Greyjoy, the youngest brother of Balon Greyjoy, the current king of the Iron Islands, was the old acquaintance who first recognized him. The guy that Renly thought was a fool. Chapter 168. Aeron Greyjoy is a tall and sturdy young Ironborn with black hair and eyes. He looks to be in his 20s. When Renly was taken away, his impression of him was at best that of a drunkard. Secondly, there was something that Aeron boasted about when he was drunk. He didn't know whether it was true or not. That was that he once bet a group of goats with his longship and said that he could put out the fire in the hall just by peeing. As a result, I ate goats for a year. All in all, Renly believed that the young Ironborn who had kidnapped him was not a serious person. But when he saw each other again in this sealskin tent, it was difficult for Renly to have the unshakable and unscrupulous impression he had in the past. The slightly drooped shoulders have quietly become upright, the slightly hunched spine has become much straighter, and the carefree smile that was always on his face is no longer visible at all, and his expression is full of respect and piety. Unlike the previous drowned people who seemed to be respectful, this Aeron seemed to be really convinced of him. After several contacts, Renly even felt that he was a little afraid of him. The sea has washed away my ignorance, Lord Son of God. He said respectfully, now I am ready to believe in the great drowned god, your father, so I ask you to personally hold a drowning ceremony for me." Sitting in front of a long table filled with fish food, Renly looked at the young Ironborn standing there calmly across the long table with strange eyes. He felt that it was really ridiculous. "You should know best who I am," he replied. "Do you really believe those overwhelming rhetoric?" At this time, there was no one else in the tent except Aaron. The 3 drowned men had already left temporarily, so he had no worries about what he said. The other party was startled when he heard this, and then his head dropped even lower. "In the past, I was still young and was blinded by superficial illusions. Lord Son of God, I ask for your forgiveness. As a small person, I didn't say I blame you." Renly interrupted, "I'm just asking you, do you really believe it?" "Believe it?" Aaron nodded without hesitation. "Why?" Renly asked strangely, "You don't think I am Willis?" This question always made him feel very puzzled and even more alert. Even if he was frightened, it would be impossible for a normal person to not have the slightest suspicion about this, right? "You are Willis in the Summer Sea." Upon hearing this, Aaron glanced cautiously at the beautiful boy at the end of the long table who had shoulder-length black hair and wore a slightly loose and small drowning robe. "You were Tully in the Greenlands, Will on your way back to the Iron Islands, Gubler on your way to Great Wick, and Little Robin Thumb." Renly looked a little embarrassed when he heard this, but the other party did not finish his words, but said the last sentence with sincerity. "But I can understand that these are just necessary identity disguises when walking in the mortal world. Your true identity is the son of the drowned god. It is absolutely true. I have seen it with my own eyes, so I believe it." It seemed like he was really frightened. Renly secretly thought to himself, maybe his brain really got into the water and he became a little stupid. "How did you find me?" He then asked another question, "I mean in Pebbletown." "A woman told us." The other party replied without hesitation after hearing this. "She knew that you were in Thumb Village, she also knew that you were in Pebbletown, and even knew where you lived specifically, so we were able to find you smoothly." "What kind of woman?" Renly asked with a frown. "A silver-haired woman." Aaron replied, "She is wearing a cloak and has a good figure, but we can't see clearly what she looks like. The only thing we can be sure of is that her hair is silver." "What about others?" "There is nothing else. That woman usually only appears at night, and then leaves directly after telling you the news, never saying anything else." "You trust her so much, aren't you curious about who she is?" "We don't trust her." Saltung wanted to catch her and question her, but she was very powerful. There were more than 20 of us who couldn't catch her at all. The young Iron Man spoke in an awkward tone. Later Yantung said that maybe what she said was true, so we went to Thumb Village to find you. Unexpectedly, well, you know what happened after that." Renly nodded absently. "A silver-haired woman? The one that tracks you?" He was quite vigilant when he found out that he was being followed before, but after being found by this gang of drowned people, he had no time to pay attention to the problem. Looking at it now, it was obvious that there was a connection. "How did she find herself? Who is she?" Renly's frown deepened. "I can't figure out where I provoked this so-called silver-haired woman." In other words, in his impression, he seemed to recognize less than one silver-haired woman. Duchess Ellery of Highgarden has silver hair, but she can't appear in the Iron Islands. What about the others? Considering that the mark on the wrist opened up the historical world, Rennis in the copy counts as one, but she is already dead. And her sister could barely count as one, but she was an old woman, not a beautiful and graceful silver-haired woman. Rejuvenated? This is possible, after all, her son has changed his gender, and it is not incomprehensible to be rejuvenated, and there are indeed rumors that the queen practices black magic. But even so, even if she rejuvenated and came to this world, she couldn't possibly target me. On the surface, I had no connection with the copy. Thinking of this, Renly's mind moved, and he remembered the last silver-haired, blue-eyed woman, the son of the great queen. "How is Tiana?" he asked Aaron. Renly felt very subtle about the female figure, because it was the first time he saw such a gender-changed existence, and she was also a tyrant king who was quite famous in local history. So although they belonged to the enemy camps 200 years ago and 200 years later, Renly still didn't bear to let the other party drown in the sea without resistance, but gave her a dagger that could be used to survive. This is a rather contradictory mentality. On the one hand, he thought that if it was an enemy, it would be better to die directly, and on the other hand, he felt that if the other party was really drowned, it seemed a bit regrettable. After all, there is only one such existence. It has been sent back to the Green Land. Aaron replied. Greenland and Verdant Land are the names given to Westeros by the people of the Iron Islands. Renly didn't know how this name came about. He guessed that it might be because the mountains and rivers there were beautiful and there were more grasses. But now he was more curious about why that guy could get away so easily. Did you let her go so easily? At first, we were just very polite to her because of you, but we didn't decide to let her go. Aaron replied, then I don't know why. She made a bet with my brother Victarion to duel, and whoever lost would agree to a condition, and then she won. So your brother let her go? Yes. Aaron said, Victarion is a man who keeps his promises. He never breaks his bets, so he sent a boat to send her back to the Verdant Land. Renly was depressed when he heard this. There must be something fishy going on, but it's not important. At this moment, he only knew that the person who wanted to come to the Iron Islands didn't come, and the person who didn't want to come was trapped here. No matter how you look at it, this seems to be a lose-lose result. Immersed in this emotion, he didn't speak again for the time being. He didn't speak, but Aaron asked carefully. Son of God, about the drowning ceremony. I'll think about it. Renly replied casually, I'll give you an answer when I get to Old Wick. The plan of the drowned people is to send him to Old Wick early tomorrow morning, because it is the most sacred place in the Iron Islands, and it is most suitable for him, the Son of God, to truly appear there. At the same time, Renly also vaguely understood that the group of drowned people gathered around him did not represent all the drowned people, so those people seemed to want to stage a God's Son intimidates the heroes drama on Old Wick Island, and that kind of situation. Renly was thinking on his own, and Aaron, who received a vague response, was a little uneasy, but seeing that the boy had no intention of paying attention to him, he still tactfully said goodbye and left. Opening the curtain door of the sealskin tent, the gloomy sky and the grey sea outside immediately came into view. Aaron took a deep breath of the air full of ocean flavor and shivered involuntarily. Then he nodded to the several robed drowned people guarding on both sides of the door. Did the God's Son promise you? One of them asked softly. The God's Son needs to consider it. Aaron replied. We welcome you very much, Aaron. The tall and thin drowned man who asked the question said so. Aaron thanked him, then turned and left, thinking as he walked. What was his name? Lian? Aaron couldn't remember it a bit, but it was no big deal. After all, there were at least 70 or 80 drowned people gathered here at this time. It would be strange if he could remember all of them, and that guy seemed to have just joined. Thinking about it, Aaron suddenly frowned and looked down at the boy and girl who ran in front of him. The boy looked about 5 or 6 years old, with a runny nose, wearing ordinary coarse cloth clothes, and looked very pretty. The girl was slightly taller than the boy, but her face was full of freckles. She was neither pretty nor cute, but she was very active. Uncle Aaron, have you seen the Son of God? She ran over and grabbed the sleeve of the young Iron Man, jumping and asking. Speak with respect, Asha. Aaron said seriously, the Son of God is the Son of God, not this or that. But they all say that the Son of God is fooling people. The boy wiped his nose and said, my brothers all said so. So is your father trustworthy, or are your foolish brothers more trustworthy, Theon? Aaron reminded his nephew. The reason why he is so devout in the Son of the drowned God is not only because of what he saw with his own eyes, but also because his wise and powerful brother is also convinced of this. If it were not for his busy official duties, his brother would even consider coming to meet him in person. Aaron thinks he is a rough man, but his brother Balon is a smart man. Now whether it is a rough man or a smart man, he thinks that the boy is the Son of God, so what is he if not the Son of God? Of course, my father is more trustworthy. The boy replied. The girl rolled her eyes and asked another question. Uncle Aaron, I heard that the Son of God is about the same age as us. What does he look like? Do I have to repeat it again, Asha? Aaron Greyjoy did not answer this question, but said with a little displeasure, the Son of God is not this or that, the Son of God is. The young Ironborn, who Renly thought might have water in his brain, was educating his 2 nephews and nieces, while Renly encountered a trouble that he thought was more interesting. You are not the son of the drowned god. The first sentence of an elderly visitor dressed as a drowned man successfully attracted Renly's attention. You are just a liar. Chapter 169. Looking at the boy sitting on the chair in front of him, the 3 drowned taller sneered secretly. His appearance is indeed very intimidating. If you look closely, his hair is obviously more bizarre than the black of ordinary iron people, and his eye color is also very rare. Wearing a small grey-green-blue drowned robe, he really looks like a sacred aura that is not ordinary. But what can he do? Isn't he just a little thing that was elected to deceive people? Taller believes that the drowned god exists, so he is pious, but because of his belief, he never thinks that the drowned god has any so-called son. What do they think gods are? Are they humans who are as vulgar as those ignorant people? It's ridiculous. The drowned god is the sea, the drowned god is a flying bird, the drowned god is a ship, and even the passing sea breeze. The drowned god is an existence that is not understood by humans, so he is a god. Any existence that attempts to secularize the drowned god is nothing more than an ignorant and foolish fool. Even the name of the son of the drowned god is full of blasphemy. So he, Tall, who was respected by people as the three drowned men, was very angry now. At the same time, Tall did not believe that the son of the drowned god in history was so sacred. He believed that the so-called son of the drowned god was just a puppet nominated by many ambitious and impious people of that era, just like they nominated this child now, wanting to repeat the old tricks, or to imitate the ancients. Yes, he, the three drowned men, Tall, had long seen the true purpose of those so-called followers. Even when those people claimed to be followers of the son of the drowned god from 200 years ago, he guessed that those guys would play such a trick. It's just that he originally thought they would find an adult to carry out their plan. Is it because children are easy to control? But how much disguise can children have? The three drowned man was a little puzzled by this, just as he couldn't figure out how that group of people appeared and who they were. But it was obvious that no matter who they were a group of liars, a group of ambitious liars, and because of such a trick, they were quite popular. This made Tall, one of the leaders of the drowned men of the Iron Islands, who even personally put the driftwood crown on Balong Greyjoy's head, very dissatisfied. He believed that those people were disrespectful to God and a group of shameless people who used faith to make profits. He also believed that the existence of those people was not of any benefit to the Iron Islands at all, but was very dangerous. He also believed that the so-called son of the drowned god plan must be terminated. So he came here, found the child, and prepared to expose the lie himself. For this reason, he had to trim his beard and hair to avoid being discovered. At the same time, he had to use his previous relationships to disguise himself and get in here, in front of this so-called son of God. The three drowned people, Tall, expected the child to show panic after his questioning. He expected the other party to be speechless or even scared to cry. He expected more that. It seems that you are not in the same group with those drowned people outside. The boy's words interrupted the three drowned people's thoughts. He looked at the expression of the so-called son of God and found that the little thing was actually laughing. What's going on? Didn't he make his words clear just now? Thinking of this, Tall, the three drowned people, repeated. You are not the son of the drowned god. Yes, I have told them dozens of times, but no one believes me. This made the three drowned people frown. What's going on? Don't you collude in advance to fool people now? So careless? Did they really just grab a child and dare to let him pretend to be the son of the drowned god? Do they think that the Iron race will believe whatever they say? This is simply absurd and ridiculous. This discovery made the original anger of the three drowned man Taller dissipate. He suddenly realized that he seemed a little reckless. He should not have rushed over angrily after hearing the news, but should have inquired carefully. However, in fact, there was not much news circulating outside. People knew basically nothing except the existence of the Son of God. Since you don't admit that you are the son of the drowned god, why do you still stay here? I said I'm not, they all said I am. They said I didn't know who I was, so they knew, so they wouldn't let me go. The boy's voice sounded innocent, but then full of curiosity. So, you are not in the same group with them. Taller, the three drowned man, didn't know what to say. His previous thoughts were completely disrupted. He had never thought that this situation would occur. So he had to follow the boy's answer, they are a group of people who don't respect God, and I am a worshipper of God. Then help me escape. I don't want to stay here as a puppet. Taller was even more surprised when he heard this. Do you know you are a puppet? Isn't it obvious? I deliberately peed in front of them and no one suspected anything. Whose son of God would pee? Taller choked when he heard this, and then faced the boy's expectant eyes, inexplicably embarrassed. I can't help you escape, there are people around here. Then why did you run here? The boy's voice was surprised. I want to expose your true face. Now that you have exposed it, what will happen? Yes, what will happen? San Yanran was a little confused after hearing this. His original plan was to expose the child's true face, expecting to scold the little thing until he cried for his parents, and then he would grab him and walk him to the group of liars outside to scold him. In this way, the news that he, San Yanran, scared the fake son of God and scolded the group of liars would definitely spread. Even if the group of people outside were not ashamed, the Iron Race would never believe their words again. Originally, the plan was good, but he didn't expect this person to admit it so readily, and he was not panicked at all. How should the next thing unfold? And this little thing? Can a normal child behave like this? San Yanran suddenly realized this, and he was even more annoyed that he had not investigated beforehand. He only heard that the so-called Son of God found by the group of people outside seemed to have many magical characteristics, but at that time he treated it as a lie and disdained to listen. The Son of God does not know his essence, but his extraordinariness has been initially revealed. We must do our best to teach and assist him, and all the Iron Races must recognize his existence, and this is the purpose of my summoning you here. The words he heard when he sneaked into this place suddenly appeared in his mind, but then the old flooded man hurriedly shook his head to get rid of the words. After thinking about it, he rolled up his sleeves. I will beat you and make you cry. Although it was a bit unexpected, Taller was still prepared to do it according to his original idea. This was not a big deal. Words could not solve this problem, but there were still fists, right? As a result, before Taller, who was ready to move, took action, the strange boy suddenly asked. Who are you? My real name is Taller, they all call me the Three-Flooded Man. Taller said without much hesitation. Next, he was ready to make a formal appearance, but he didn't plan to keep pretending. But the boy's words immediately made him stop moving. Okay, Lord Tall, I have a better suggestion. What suggestion? Come closer. The boy's expression was serious and his tone was earnest. After thinking about it, Sanyan people felt that it was no big deal. It would only take a little longer, so they did it. Just when Tall got close to a certain distance, the boy suddenly picked up the plate of black bread on the long table beside him and hit himself in the face with a bang. Then, regardless of his bleeding nose, he shouted to the outside. Someone, he wants to kidnap me. Chapter 170. The originally peaceful beach camp instantly turned into a mess after that voice. Faced with this sudden kidnapping incident, the 70 or 80 drowned people gathered here shouted out, each holding a driftwood stick, and surrounded the bald old drowned man who was holding the boy tightly. Don't come any closer, come any closer, if you come any closer I'll beat him. Under the gloomy dusk light, facing a large group of hostile drowned people around the beach, the old drowned man roared slightly tremblingly. The boy who was clamped between his elbows had blood on his forehead and face, and he seemed to be coughing in response. A few times, making the people around him even more angry. Who are you? The old drowned man with long grey hair stepped away from the crowd and asked the three drowned man coldly, do you know what you are doing? Do you know that you have offended the great drowned god? I. Departing from the original plan, the old kidnapper was a little panicked at this time, but the boy he was holding yelled at this time. He said his name was Taller. After saying these words, the old kidnapper trembled all over, and the group of people around him who were watching eagerly were also in an uproar. Thaler the Three Drowned is very famous in the Iron Islands, even more famous than the grey-haired Sauron the Salt Tongue, just because he has been diligently walking around the islands all his life, and was drowned by his hands and became a follower of the drowned. There are many, and not long ago, he personally placed the driftwood crown on the head of the new king of the Iron Islands Balong Greyjoy. Therefore, both the ancient drowned people and the local drowned people here are very familiar with this person. However, the one they were familiar with had long grey hair and a beard, but the current one was bald, as if a fleshy egg had been opened, and his appearance looked absurd. Regardless of this, what is he doing at this time? Tall? Tall. Sauron, the grey-haired salt-tongued man, repeatedly chanted the name, and then reprimanded loudly, what a tall! As a servant of the great drowned god, now you dare to threaten his son like this? Or even attack him? How can you be pious if you are so disobedient? Bullshit, son of the drowned god! After hearing this, Old Egg suddenly became anxious. He didn't care about the panic that had arisen due to the sudden change, and instead yelled back. You, a blasphemer who deserves to meet the storm god, have the nerve to talk about piety to me? Slick-tongued Sauron, using a child to fool people, you are not too upset. I know you don't believe it, many of you don't believe it. The grey-haired Salt-tongue snorted coldly, that's why I will take the son of the drowned god to Old Wake Island and go to the sacred Grey Sea King's Hall to prove it to you. But I didn't expect you to do such an unjust thing. Thaler, Sanuinran, I am so blind that I will never be polite to you again with the stick in my hand. The drowned god will definitely punish you. Following these words, dozens of drowned people around also walked away angrily, and some angrily hit the ground with their driftwood sticks, causing bursts of roaring sounds. Damn Sauron, you are just a talker. Who doesn't know that you? Lao Yanran angrily prepared to scold him back, but before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt a blow on his waist. He looked down and saw that the boy he had coerced was gesturing behind him covertly. This damn boy, what kind of trick is he playing again? Thaler, the three-drowned man, cursed secretly. According to his normal plan, he shouldn't be so embarrassed, because even if he grabs this kid and shows his name, these people won't dare to do anything to him, just because he has high prestige and can confront them openly. They dare not do anything to themselves. However, such a kidnapping at the moment completely disrupted the situation that should have been there. Facing the boy with his face covered in blood, those people wanted to drown themselves one by one, and they were unable to carry out their original plan. Taller was anxious in his heart, but then he reacted and glanced sideways. Then he saw the drowned man sneaking around behind him, seemingly preparing for a sneak attack. This made the old drowned man even more anxious, and at this moment the boy he was holding screamed. So he reacted instantly and yelled, "Don't come over here! If you come over again, I'll tell him to look good." These words caused the steps of the young drowned men approaching from behind to stop immediately, but also aroused even greater anger from those in front. It's just that Lao Yanran has no time to care about their emotions at this time. At this point, he can't let go of the kid. Honestly, it can't be said that the injuries the kid suffered were all caused by him. This cunning boy. Taller cursed secretly in his heart, but it did not affect his outward behavior. It seemed that he was a kidnapper for the first time. He looked a little unfamiliar and a little panicked. However, under the cover of darkness, Lao Yanran still managed to speak out a series of words that qualified a kidnapper, and he no longer had any intention of arguing with Yan Tung. "Stay back, stay away from me, don't come close. Stand back, further away. Boat, yes, get out of the way and get me a boat quickly. Rope? Yes, yes, there must be a rope." With the hostages in hand, the drowned people were helpless, so as the kidnappers threatened them, they had to prepare their boats and wooden oars, and then had to retreat several hundred meters away. After doing all this, the surrounding environment has become very dark. Black clouds float in the sky, continuously blocking the already sparse moonlight, making the visibility on the sea level high and low. It doesn't look like a good time to set sail. However, the situation forced the old drowned man to care so much. After tying up Renly with a rope, he supported the oars and prepared to set sail. The kidnapped person also stayed at the stern quite honestly at this time, without any resistance. Instead, he looked quite relaxed, which made the three drowned people taller even more angry after seeing it. "Damn kid, wait until I pull my hand out later, I will beat you to death," he cursed. Renly glanced at the other party and didn't care. Originally, he was quite happy when he found a person from the enemy camp in the tent, thinking that maybe he could use the other party to get rid of those drowned people. For example, the other party was responsible for providing the boat, and he was responsible for escaping. However, after several conversations, Renly felt that this man was just an old fool. It would be difficult to cooperate with him, and he might even hinder him. It would be better to use his identity to escape. So he was kidnapped. Renly planned to wait until the boat sailed farther and the old man was completely out of the sight of the drowned people, and then he would jump into the sea and escape. Although this still did not solve the fundamental problem, it was enough to divert the attention of the drowned people to the hostile camp where the three drowned people taller were. The relationship between the two parties did not seem to be harmonious. Even if he explained that he had escaped, no one would believe it. In other words, judging from the attitude of the old drowned man, there might not be any explanation, and this made it easier for Renly to leave. As long as there was enough time to buffer, he. Thinking about it, Renly suddenly heard the old drowned man rowing a panicked cry, which made him look stunned. Then he suddenly saw the bald old man standing there rowing, suddenly tilted his body and fell into the sea with a splash. Or, he was dragged into the sea after someone grabbed the oar. Because then Renly saw a tall, wet young man climb up the bow from under the water, and then turned his head to look at him. The boy's face froze. "Who are you?" "My name is Ryan, Lord Son of God." The other man shook off the water stains on his body, gathered his long black hair that was close to his cheeks, and then smiled at Renly. "I came to save you." Chapter 171. The coastline under the blue sky looks vast and bright. The beach is covered with red-brown crabs that are either crawling or motionless. White birds are flying high in the sea. Occasionally, a few of them land on the reefs to comb their feathers. They are not afraid of ships coming. Not far from the beach is a barren hill area covered with weeds, and at the top of the area stand rows of pale and ancient huge skeletons. They are the remains of Naga, or what the Ironmen call the Hall of the Grey King. The Iron Islands are a place of constant disputes, but this area located in the northwest corner of Old Wick Island has always remained peaceful. In ancient times, under the ribs of Naga was the place where the kings of the Iron Islands were crowned and selected. Not long ago, when the Iron Islands rebelled against the Baratheon dynasty, the new generation of Iron Islands King Balon Greyjoy was also crowned with a driftwood crown here, and then called on all the Ironmen to start a war. Just as this beach is called the Holy Coast, this place is a very sacred place in the hearts of countless Ironmen, and now, Renly, the holy son of the drowned god, has arrived here. A small grey-green-blue robe looks quite loose and free on him, and holding a black driftwood stick also makes this beautiful black-haired boy look more solemn. After getting off the boat, he was followed by a group of drowned people, and other boats were docked one after another, unloading some food and items needed to build a camp. At this time, the climate has basically entered winter. Although there is no snow, the temperature at the seaside is still not warm. Walking on the soft beach, the breath you exhale is a little white. Kicking away a red-shelled crab that blocked the way, Renly looked at everything in front of him. Finally, he looked at the pale ribs on the top of the hill not far away, and felt that this place seemed to have not changed much in nearly 300 years. He sighed and sighed about this, but suddenly a soft greeting came from behind him. "Has the Son of God been here?" "No." Renly answered unhappily. "They say you are from Old Wick Island." The person behind him asked again. Renly glanced at the person asking the question, not wanting to pay attention to him. This person is called Rian, with a very ordinary pointed face and the common black hair of the Ironborn. He was wearing a rather loose robe of the drowned man, and he was not short in height, so he looked very thin overall. He was the one who dived to rescue Renly last night. Because of his merit in protecting the Emperor, he was arranged by the leader of the drowned man to protect Renly, the Son of God. Renly hated this person, but he couldn't show it too obviously. After all, this person was his lifesaver, but he didn't want to answer the question of his origin. So he changed the subject and asked, "How long will we stay here?" "It takes until all the drowned people in the archipelago have gathered." The tall and thin Ryan replied, "Master Salttongue and Master Drum have announced your identity." Renly nodded when he heard this, and did not ask any more questions. He turned his eyes to look at the hills in the distance again. Salttongue and Drum are the two leaders of the drowned people around. Salttongue is the old drowned person with long grey hair who is confronting Tall, and has more than 50 local drowned people following him, while Drum is a younger drowned person who came from more than 200 years ago and is the leader of the group of more than 30 ancient drowned people. Renly thinks these two people are completely ambitious people who want to rely on his identity as the Son of God to work together to unite the entire drowned class of the archipelago. What they want to do next, Renly doesn't know much, but he can see clearly what they are doing now, calling people to build a camp on the beach. The drowned people were all wearing grey, green and blue coarse cloth robes, which looked quite thin in winter, but none of them seemed to feel cold. They were working hard and were using some driftwood collected from the sea to build simple wooden houses and tents. This kind of thing obviously didn't require Renly to wait here. With nothing else to do, he decided to go to the place where the Naga remains were. He didn't forget that the bones actually had special effects, and he was also curious about whether the thing had other effects. No one stopped him, but 7 or 8 drowned people followed him all the time, protecting him anytime and anywhere. After the kidnapping, the drowned people transported the boy to Old Wick Island without stopping, and sent enough people to follow him, and strictly examined all the people who met him, which made Renly feel like he was tying himself up in knots. But at this time, his mentality had changed, or he was no longer too worried about escaping. Because he learned something when he touched the wrist mark this morning, and this thing directly solved the ship problem that had troubled Renly for a long time. However, this matter still needs to wait for a while, and in the meantime. Thinking absent-mindedly, a crisp voice suddenly came, interrupting his thoughts. Are you the son of the drowned god? This seemed to be the voice of a little girl. Looking up, Renly found that there were two children standing at the end of the beach, with brown hair and black eyes, a boy and a girl. The boy was shorter and the girl was taller, and now the two were looking at him curiously. They are quite brave. Renly thought, nodded to the two children, and didn't intend to pay more attention to them and prepared to continue walking, but the girl's next sentence made Renly couldn't help but look at her more. You are so beautiful. Thank you, you are also very. Can you marry me? I want to marry you. This surprised all the drowned men following Renly, and one of them even stepped forward to reprimand him. Renly was amused and felt that children were really interesting, so he waved his hand and walked away without caring. How can this be called nonsense? The girl behind him continued to shout, men can marry women, why can't women marry men? Come on, old man, are you going to hit me? Don't pull me, Theon, why are you so timid? Theon? Renly thought that the boy before was not the poor eunuch. Calculating, it seems that the age is almost the same. He didn't think much about it, because as he continued to move forward, the drowned men scattered around the entire coastline all bowed to him passing by, and some even knelt on the ground with fanatic faces, making Renly uncomfortable for a while. However, during this period of time as a charlatan, he was familiar with this, or he could ignore it, nodding or waving his hands occasionally, and more often just ignoring it, and no one cared much about it. When he was far away from the coastline, these people were basically gone. The road in the area where Naga Hill was located was not flat. As he moved forward, the surface slowly rose upwards, full of gravel and weeds, and it was not easy to walk. However, the advantage of holding a stick in his hand was that he didn't have to worry too much about slipping and falling or being tripped. A group of drowned people guarded Renly and finally successfully arrived at the Naga remains on the hill. Standing on the hard rock surface, the shadows cast by the rows of ribs above his head, looking up at the pale and ancient huge bones under the sun, Renly couldn't help but recall the scene when he appeared here last time. At that time, time was tight and there was no chance to pay close attention to this place, but now. The thoughts in his mind stopped abruptly, the surrounding environment seemed to become a little hazy all of a sudden, even the sunlight in the sky also became hazy, and his heartbeat suddenly increased at this moment, making Renly couldn't help but cover his chest, and then he looked up and looked around blankly, only to feel dizzy, and the blood flow in his body was getting faster and faster. Faintly, he seemed to hear a vast roar from the depths of the sea. Chapter 172. The black-haired boy wearing a loose robe walked under the ribs and suddenly began to look dazed. He stood there motionless without any reaction. At first, the drowned people following him felt that the Son of God might be observing the ribs on his hand, but as time passed, some people realized that something was wrong. The first person to notice the abnormality was Ryan, who was following behind. He was originally observing the empty space covered with pale ribs, but out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw an unnatural trembling all over the boy in front of him. This made him. He frowned, then seemed to think of something, his expression suddenly changed, and he stepped in front of the boy. Crouching down and looking, he directly discovered that the boy's eyes, which should have been bright and bright, had dilated pupils, and his eyes were unfocused and full of confusion. So the drowned man named Ryan picked up the boy and ran downwards without hesitation. What do you do, Ryan? The drowned people next to him were full of surprise at this, and some even blocked his way vigilantly. However, the next words from the other party made them move out of the way. The Son of God is sick. If Renly were awake at this moment, he would probably complain about how the Son of God could get sick again. But at this time, he completely ignored everything around him. One after another, roaring sounds that seemed to belong to ancient sea beasts occupied his entire mind. He could not hear clearly, but it seemed to have some hidden meaning. What means? He pondered this in his mind, but never understood it until he felt an external influence. How are you? Son of God? Son of God! Son of God! The weak voice seemed to come from the horizon, but it quickly came closer, and finally became very close. His face was being patted back and forth, feeling a little painful and in a trance. As a result, his swaying vision quickly condensed, and finally he succeeded in seeing a face that he hated very much. Ryan seems to be in a hurry? This thought couldn't help but flash through his mind, but then Renly ignored it. The surrounding environment was noisy. When he looked up, he found that he was surrounded by the rough faces of the drowned people, and the sun was shining brightly. Therefore it is mostly obscured. Whether sincere or not, at least the expressions on all the faces were full of worry. Sauron, the old drowned man with long grey hair, was also in this camp at this time. Seeing Renly looking up, he hurriedly asked. One sentence. How are you feeling, Lord Shenzi? Are you feeling unwell? There is nothing uncomfortable. Renly replied. The rapidly beating heart in his chest had basically returned to normal, but faintly, he seemed to notice some other changes. So he said, You go and do your work, I want to go to the Grey Sea King Hall again. No. The boy was interrupted before he could finish his words. He looked sideways and saw that the tall and lanky annoying drowned man was staring at him seriously, with a rather tough look in his eyes, which made Renly a little confused. Others were also surprised by this. How can you interrupt the decision of the Son of God? Sauron, the long grey-haired salt-tongued man, frowned and stared at the young drowned man named Ryan, feeling that his words were extremely overreaching. I mean, sir, he suddenly fell ill just after walking there. Seeing this, the tall and thin Yanran hurriedly added, They have all seen it. After he reminded him, the drowned men who had followed Renly nodded quickly. It seems so. It didn't take long for him to get sick. Yes, Lord Shenzi recovered after leaving. These words made Salt-Tongue Sauron understand, and then he frowned unconsciously. The ribs on the Naga Hills are covered by the drowned people called the Grey Sea King's Hall. It was built with the remains of the first-generation king of the Iron Islands, the Grey Sea King, who reportedly killed Naga, the first sea dragon in the world. Hall, and the Grey Sea King was favored by the drowned god for this feat. He ruled the Ironborn in the hall for thousands of years. Finally, when his skin became as grey as his beard and hair, he put down his crown and stepped into the sea. The maesters think this is an absurd folklore, and not all drowned people believe in the existence of the Grey Sea King. But no matter what, the Holy Coast's current status depends only on the existence of the Grey Sea King's Hall. It is the most sacred place in the archipelago. From ancient times to the present, countless kings of the Iron Islands have been crowned there, and countless people have come there to worship and worship. However, now the son of the drowned god would actually get hurt for stepping into it. I heard the voice of the gods. The boy's words interrupted Salt-Tongue Sauron's thoughts, and the people around him were also stunned by this. I heard it, but not everything. Renly said seriously, so I must go back. The actual reason was naturally not this, but if he didn't say anything, it seemed unlikely that he would want to go back, so he had to use this cover. What did your father say? Salt-Tongue Sauron hurriedly squatted in front of him and asked. There was an excited expression on his face, and he didn't know whether he was really excited or just cooperating with Renly's words. I didn't hear you clearly, so I'm going back. Renly repeated, You can't stop me. These words made some people look at each other, some were dubious, some were excited, and some were frowning. However, due to the fact that it was related to the drowned god, they really didn't dare to stop him. Even the tall and thin drowned man Ryan stopped talking several times before finally saying nothing. So Renly was escorted back into the open space beneath the ribs. It was noon, and the light from the sky was very bright. However, when Renly walked into this place again, his vision became hazy again, and he was in a trance. The heartbeat in his chest was like a drum, and the blood flow in his body was gradually accelerated. Originally, he should feel uncomfortable or even painful, but Renly did not feel anything bad at the moment. It was like an ancient roar from the deep sea that occupied his whole body and mind. The characteristics of the psychic heart took effect at this moment, so Renly could feel what was filled in the sound dull and eager. Repeating continuously, the meaning of the sound was exactly the same, as if some phonograph was playing the same music repeatedly, and it seemed to be unconsciously inviting, waiting for someone to respond to it. Renly could not respond, he didn't even know what this thing was, so he could only stay still. But maybe listening to this voice is good, or maybe he triggered something. The roaring voices gradually had some different vibrations, which made Renly, whose mind was originally dazed by the roaring, sober up a lot. At the same time, he felt a stream of coolness emerging and spreading in his forehead, just like being suddenly poured with cold water when he was sweating profusely in the dog days of summer, which was very refreshing. He gradually had an emotional feeling of not being able to speak without speaking, just like a mute who could not speak all the time was suddenly cured. But this feeling was very strange. Even if he had the ability to speak, he seemed to have no idea where to start. Renly was a little anxious because of this. This kind of anxiety was not the anxiety of understanding something urgent, but the anxiety of not being able to speak, or like sometimes he wanted to describe something, but couldn't find the right words for a while. He didn't speak in the end because he was interrupted again. But it was not that Ryan who interrupted him at this time, but the salt-tongued Sauron who ran up hurriedly. "Lord Son of God, please help pull back the believer Aaron Greyjoy. He can't go to the Flowing Water Palace yet." "What does it mean?" Renly, who was carried out of the rib area, was already unhappy about this, and was even more confused after hearing this. But then he understood what happened. This salt-tongued Sauron had previously performed a drowning ceremony for Aaron Greyjoy, but he didn't save him, and he seemed to have drowned. "What's the use of you looking for me for this?" Renly was speechless after understanding this, but then he reacted. So this old guy is looking for him to take the blame. Chapter 173. Aaron Greyjoy, the fifth son of the Greyjoy family, the youngest brother of Balon Greyjoy, the current king of the Iron Islands, and the captain of the Ironborn who once kidnapped Renly and Maegor. He is a handsome young Ironborn, but even if he looks good, he still looks scary when his face is pale and his lips are blue. Looking at the young Ironborn in front of him who is only wearing a pair of sealskin shorts, Renly frowned. "If I remember correctly, not long ago, this guy asked me to hold a ceremony for him personally, but I was perfunctory at that time, but I didn't expect that this guy who was so eager to join the drowned army was drowned." Renly didn't have this person in his previous life, but he knew that the Euron in his memory was the second brother of this Aaron, and Theon was this person's nephew. Of course, all this is not important at the moment. The most important thing for him at this time is how to fool him. The murderer who drowned the man was standing beside him at this time, staring at the boy with an expectant and solemn expression. There was also a group of drowned people surrounding him. Everyone stared at Renly, as if afraid of missing his slightest movement. "Can you save Uncle Aaron?" The young voice was full of worry and expectation. It was the boy Theon who was mixed in a group of drowned people. After he finished speaking, someone among the drowned people responded. "That's not saving, child, it's taking Aaron out of the Flowing Water Palace. The great drowned god needs a good sailor, so he called Aaron over. Then as the son of the drowned god, the Lord Son of God should be able to bring my uncle back, right?" The boy asked suddenly, and seemed relieved. No one answered his question. The drowned people were silent in the face of this. Renly, the person involved, just glanced at the boy and ignored him. However, the boy's words hit the point. As the son of the drowned god, it is not easy to take someone out of his own hall, right? At least many superstitious people think it seems easy, but only those with a cool head know the real situation. This is one of the reasons why Renly did not intend to pretend to be the son of the drowned god from the beginning. Being a charlatan sounds interesting, but it is not so easy to pretend. You need someone to help you deceive people, or you have real skills. Renly thought of the senior of the son of the drowned god more than 200 years ago. If I remember correctly, he also drowned many people. Afterwards, he just made a few light remarks and no one cared. However, the situation of that person is different from Renly at this time. That person has already established the image of the Son of God and has even been crowned as king. And himself. He did not think much, but knelt on the head of the drowning man, touching his left wrist with his right hand, and covering his forehead with his left hand. It was cold and stiff. In his memory, there is a person in this world who can resurrect the dead, but that is obviously not himself. For this situation, it seems that there is no other choice except to try the ancient road seed on his left wrist. Renly didn't know whether the seed of the ancient road would work on the dead, but he thought that it was the worst option to just say casually like that senior that the drowned god would not let him go. The middle option was to put on a charlatan attitude and announce the result after trying hard, so that even if he was questioned, he could probably fool people. As for the best option, watching the fire that others could not see merge into the dead man's forehead, Renly pursed his lips. He knew that the fire could not merge into dead things, but now it merged into it, so did it mean that the other party was not completely dead? However, his previous experiments on this were flour and wood, not human corpses. The fact that there was no feedback from his wrist afterwards made Renly's heart sink. So he began to think about the consequences of this matter unconsciously in his mind. If possible, he naturally wanted to deny his identity as the Son of God, but he would not say it at other times. Denying it at this time would be completely courting death, so even if he could not save the person, he had to put on a charlatan attitude. Even if he would be questioned, even if the Greyjoy family held him responsible afterwards, that would be a matter for the future. For the time being, Renly did not think that the people around him would turn against him directly because he did not save the people. Which priest who drowned people has not drowned people? But even so, he must find a chance to escape afterwards, because this identity has cracked and is not so solid. Maybe one day something like this will suddenly happen, and then he will be asked to take the blame. Thinking of this, he could not help but get angry at the old guy named Sauron behind him. You don't have the ability to drown anyone you want? Drowned people, but you drowned your king's brother. Drowned, you asked me to block the knife for you. He did not continue to think about it, because a faint feedback suddenly came from his wrist, which made Renly's eyes condense, and he focused on the dead in front of him. The other party was still motionless. But it seems that he is not dead completely. The boy felt a little happy, and then he was a little worried. But what should he do? Artificial respiration? Start CPR? As a qualified modern person, he has no idea about these things, and he is probably not as familiar with them as the drowning people around him. Call others to rescue quickly? The leader of the drowning people was not saved before, so how can I ask them to save him? Time passed slowly. On the surface, the boy was expressionless, but secretly his mind was running fast. But after a certain moment, his mind suddenly moved, and he closed his eyes. The boy who was kneeling and sitting there stood upright, with his left hand covering the head of the corpse. His black hair and loose robe were constantly swaying in the sea breeze, and his solemn face looked really like that. This makes many sensible people wonder in their hearts, wondering if this kid really has the ability to live the dead? This seems unlikely, but this child has many characteristics that ordinary people do not have. If it is true. It seems quiet, but in fact the undercurrent situation seems to be much quieter at this moment. People instinctively hold their breath and stare closely at the boy in the shallows, staring at him kneeling there motionless, staring at him. His clothes were soaked by the sea water, and he stared at the small fish gradually gathering from all directions along the shallow water, and finally gathered into a circle around the boy's legs. The tall and thin drowned Lean was among the drowned people, so his expression became a little complicated. Many drowned people around him also felt trembling in their hearts. Those drowned people who originally believed in the son of the drowned god were even more hopeful. The two children in the crowd were startled by this, and then were scolded by an old drowned man and shut their mouths tightly. However, the silence did not last long. When the dead man who was originally lying motionless in the shallows suddenly stood up, when he bent over and began to cough violently and vomited a large amount of sea water, when the man who should have been sentenced to death glanced around with his painful and blank eyes. At this moment, the crowd immediately became uproar. Alive, really saved. The son of the drowned god, indeed the son of the drowned god. The great drowned god appears. A group of people shouted at this moment. Some helped pat the back of the resurrected man to make it easier for him to spit out the sea water. Others helped Renly stand up and then tied the hem of his robe with their own hands. The sea water soaked in it was wrung out, and some people were busy bending down to wipe the sand and dust off their bare little feet with their sleeves. More people were around, either cheering or joyful, or standing there in shock and doubt about life. However, none of this affected Renly's thoughts. At this time, he was still immersed in a system message that had not surfaced for a long time. Your psychic heart characteristics have successfully evolved into psychic words. Evolution. Psychic words. Renly, who was busy serving the drowned people, seemed a little absent-minded. After looking at the young Ironborn he had rescued, he shifted his gaze and looked at the Naga Hills in the distance. Chapter 174. Everything that happened on the beach was noticed by the drowned people here. Although not everyone could see the birth of the situation with their own eyes, after the incident, when the news spread, people still felt the same, and were even more enthusiastic because of their companions around them. So when Aeron Greyjoy was hugged and kissed by the drowned people in a trance and put on the grey, green and blue robes representing the drowned priests, he was directly surrounded by a group of drowned people who did not see it with their own eyes. They asked about his drowning ceremony and everything he saw after death. However, the new drowned man seemed to have little memory of his experience of resurrection from the dead. He stumbled when he spoke, and his expression was blank, as if he had not recovered yet. Sea water, all sea water, inside, outside, left, right. I seem to have entered the drowned god's water palace, and then. What happened then? A young drowned man asked impatiently, did you see the great drowned god? Drowned god? No, I didn't see him, I really want to see him. No, I seem to have heard the ancient road. Aaron said hesitantly, that seems to be the words of the drowned god's advice. Then. As he spoke, his eyes unconsciously looked at the end of the beach, the black-haired boy who was talking to Sultan Sauron. Then I heard the voice of the Son of God. What did the Lord say? Another drowned man asked enthusiastically, call you back? Or let you follow him? Neither. Aaron answered hesitantly, what I heard seemed to be, run, your brother Euron is coming, run, your brother Euron. He covered his head in pain before he finished speaking, his expression was both confused and fearful, and there was a trace of hatred for the name Euron. The drowned man around was quite puzzled by this. Your brother is coming? Euron? What does it mean? They wanted to ask, but at this time Aaron seemed to suddenly realize that he had said too much, so his face panicked, and then he stood up with a staggering step, pushed away the people around him and left in a hurry. He doesn't seem happy. A young drowned man at the original place was surprised by this. After all, he died once. Another drowned man nodded, no one would be happy if it were him. But he was saved. The young drowned man said incomprehensibly, it is such an honor to be saved by the son of the sacred drowned god. Maybe he would rather stay in the drowned god's flowing water palace. Several young drowned men over there felt a little puzzled about this, while more drowned men here were staring at two figures, one old and one young, not far ahead. The old man had long grey hair, outstanding temperament, sharp features, and full of majesty, but at this time, facing the black-haired boy opposite him, he seemed like a child who had made a mistake, and looked well behaved. Although the boy looked immature and short, his expression and movements were full of arrogance. Because the distance was a bit far, the onlookers could not hear what they were saying, but they could clearly see that the leader of the drowned men who led them was honest and did not dare to refute at this time. This made some people feel emotional, but more people subconsciously took it for granted. Unconsciously, the atmosphere here has changed. Renly didn't care what the drowned people in the distance thought of the current scene. At this time, he was staring at the old drowned man standing in front of him with a serious face, and his words were not polite. If this happens again, I won't help you solve it. You have to know that resurrecting the dead is not as easy as you think. Resurrection, the dead, not so easy. These words made the old drowned man think a lot, so facing the serious boy in front of him, he said without hesitation, I understand, Lord Son of God, if there are such things in the future, we will not bother you again. At the same time, there is no need, don't let anyone disturb me, everything you are doing now is not important to me. Okay, Lord Son of God, I will strictly restrain my subordinates drowned, don't worry, they won't bother you again. Sultan Sauron still answered without hesitation. I'm not interested in the learning requirements you mentioned before, such as dogma and rituals, so forget it. No problem, you are the son of the drowned god, so you don't need to learn our useless things. The old drowned man said with a guilty expression, I didn't think it through, Lord Son of God, I will think carefully in the future. That stick doesn't fit your hand well. I'll find you a new one right away. As for food. I know, you like beef, not fish, I'll tell the drowned man to prepare it for you. This old guy is very good at judging the situation. Renly thought, feeling that there was nothing to say, so he turned around and was about to leave, but after a few steps, he suddenly thought of something, paused, turned around and said, that Ryan. You don't like him. Sultan Sauron heard the words and immediately said, I'll replace him with someone you like, what do you think of Sandor? Renly was a little moved, but after thinking about it, he waved his hand. Forget it, let's stick with Ryan. He felt that there was something wrong with Ryan, but Renly couldn't tell what was wrong, so he was a little worried. But if that guy really had hostility towards him, he would have already taken action. As one of the close drowned, Ryan had no shortage of opportunities. So he was a friend, not an enemy? Or was he just overthinking? While walking back and thinking about this, Renly soon found that the person involved had been surrounded by 7 or 8 drowned again, so he looked up at the other person's face and didn't find anything wrong with him, so he didn't think much about it, and planned to observe more and stay alert when he had free time in the future. And for now, the most important thing. He looked up in the direction of the Naga Hill. The characteristics of the psychic heart evolved into the psychic language, and Renly thought that the psychic language was very magical because it could convey emotions through body language. That's right, it's emotions, not words. The main reason for resuscitating Aelin before was that he was not completely dead, and the second was the spiritual stimulation of the ancient road seed. However, the stimulation of the ancient road seed alone was useless, because the host's main consciousness had fallen into a near-death coma without consciousness and could not cooperate at all. So after Renly noticed this, he took the initiative to try the ability that he had not had time to speak out on the hill. In the end, he successfully transmitted a series of fear emotions to the other party, and after scared him awake, he also obtained the recognition of the system information. And he obviously would not ignore the source of all this. It was because there was a will on the hill that was eager to communicate with himself, or with anyone who could communicate. So, what did it want to communicate? With this doubt, Renly walked towards the hill again, but he obviously couldn't imagine that he would be there for 3 days. Chapter 175. Under the moonlight and starry sky, this yellow beach on the edge of Old Wyke Island is dotted with bright lights one after another. Bonfires are burning quietly everywhere, like hundreds of lanterns being lit at once, messy, and they are scattered and spread throughout the entire sacred coast. There were 4 young drowned men sitting around a bonfire at the end of the beach. One of them, the brown-haired one, had an angry look on his face and was chatting with his companions. "We're actually said that we are ungodly. When the Son of God wakes up, I wonder if he still dares to say that." "What did you say to him?" his companion asked curiously. "I told you about Aaron's resurrection, but he didn't believe it." The brown-haired drowned man said. "He also said that I was a liar, that we were all liars and that we had joined forces to deceive them. I told Deke, but he didn't believe it either." Another companion snorted. "We used to be good friends, but he didn't believe me. Instead, he believed what the 3 drowned man taller said. I told him that the old man the thing came to assassinate the Son of God a while ago, but he still didn't believe me and thought I was slandering the old guy. They are just a bunch of short-sighted and ignorant people." The last one said silently, "When the Son of God wakes up, they will know who is right and who is wrong." "When will the Son of God wake up?" the person who spoke at the beginning asked this crucial question. "I don't know, maybe wait until early tomorrow morning." "You guessed the same thing last night. Same as the night before yesterday." These words made the 4 young drowned people look at each other, and finally they all looked at the place where Naga Hill was located. Unfortunately, they were not close to it at this time, and they could only see a slightly lit fire, which was there is no proof that Lord Saltung Sauron sent people to station at the top of the hill. "I hope you don't have to say that tomorrow night," one person murmured. "I hope so too." The person who spoke shrugged and glanced at another bonfire not far away. "That way they can shut up. Early tomorrow morning, we will go talk to Sauron." On the other side of the coast, a steady voice sounded from the sealskin tent. "This farce needs to end." The speaker was a middle-aged drowned man, sitting on the ground in the tent. His hair was messy, but his face was very neat. At this time, he closed his eyes tightly, facing a fire pit in the tent, and said calmly, "The war hasn't stopped yet, our mission hasn't ended yet, but we don't have time to waste it here with Sauron. That's right, I still have a fishing village on Gudeng Island that I haven't finished yet." A skinny old man next to him said while lowering his head and rubbing his dark feet, "I originally wanted to come here to see what the Son of God looks like. What's going on? It's been 2 days, and Sauron still doesn't want to see it, and he still expects me to support him. Sauron is a cunning old guy." The last person in the camp said with a cold snort, "The little guy he is looking for is more cunning and cruel than him. He should be beaten to death." The words were obviously full of anger, causing the skinny old man in the tent who had heard many rumors to grin at him. "Why, you 3 drowned people have suffered in front of Sauron. Only the drowned god can make me suffer." The bald-headed old drowned man said without blushing and out of breath, that Saltung is not qualified. He said this, but in his heart he couldn't help but think about how he was dragged off the boat that night so that he could be suspended and drowned, and he couldn't help but feel even more angry. "That boy, let me tell you, you can tell at a young age that he is a scourge. When we finish talking to Sauron tomorrow, you must support me in beating him to death." "Beat him to death?" The drowned god will not allow the blood of the Ironborn on our hands. Then soak to death. I heard that the Son of God is not afraid of water. The skinny old drowned man reminded. The best he can do is hold his breath. Thaler, the three drowned man, said disapprovingly, my estimate is to drown him for a whole day. I don't believe he will die. Perhaps it's really hard to die. Didn't you listen to the young men outside? All the people who died in the past 2 days were saved by the Son of God. The skinny old drowned man said again, he is still the younger brother of our good King Balan. I asked him, it's not like lying. Then Aaron is just a lazy drunkard. Thaler the three drowned said disdainfully, his words cannot be trusted. But I heard that our King Balan also believed in the Son of God, and even sent a pair of his sons and daughters to identify him. I saw those 2 little guys this morning, and they also believed very much. Do you believe what a child says? Sanyanran retorted. The other party smiled when he heard this, and then continued nonchalantly, I also heard that the Son of God saved a man suffering from erythema when he passed by Pebble Town. That man can now jump. Many fishermen there are aware of this. You know, if Sauron and his group hadn't strictly prohibited outsiders from coming over, they would have come here long ago. If erythema is not fatal, it doesn't mean anything. These words made the skinny old Yanran blink, just refute whatever I say, why, Baron is blind, are you 3 Yanran also blind? Then you, old grey owl, are you ready to side with them? If that really happens, of course I will stand on their side. The skinny old drowned man said while rubbing his feet, as you get older, who doesn't have some problems with you? Especially someone like me who sleeps on the rocks all day long. It's not easy when the wind blows. Don't hold out hope. The middle-aged Yanran, who was facing the brazier with his eyes closed, said calmly, I have also heard about these news, but Sauron has not allowed us to see the Son of God for so long. It is all false information. That's why I'm hanging out with you now. The skinny old man hugged one of his feet and said playfully, I'm just waiting to expose that old guy's lies with everyone. The hostile camp over there was discussing the son of the drowned god, and the grey-haired old man in another tent here was sitting face to face with a young drowned man on the ground, talking about the same thing. Old Grey OU has been shaken. I think that as soon as the Son of God wakes up, he will immediately stand by our side. The grey-haired old drowned man said in a calm tone, 3 drowned man Taller has smart drowned people under his command, but under the leadership of Taller, they can't make any trouble. We don't need to care about it. The only one who needs attention is the blind Varan. Blacktus, this man read books before he was blind and has a good brain. He has the largest number of drowned people, so he needs to pay special attention to it. They are just ignorant people. The young drowned man opposite said disdainfully, and then asked, when do you think the Son of God will wake up? The young drowned man who asked the question was named Zhogu. He had a fair face and soft features. He sat upright and looked like a scholar rather than a priest of the gods. You will naturally wake up when it's time to wake up. The grey-haired old drowned man replied, we mortals cannot speculate on the conversation with the great drowned god. The great drowned god. The young drowned man chewed on this word and said hesitantly, do you really believe that the Son of God is talking to the drowned god? That's what the Son of God claimed on that day. Salt-tongued Sauron said, I won't lie. Really? Zhogu was noncommittal when he heard the words, but at this time he didn't open his mouth to refute anything. After the dead man was resurrected that day, the man in front of him looked like he was serving the Son of God. No one could tell whether he was sincere or not, but it was nothing short of a right choice. Just because the Son of the drowned god's prestige among the drowned people is increasing day by day. Different from those later drowned people who had a questioning mentality, the drowned people who were here originally had a better understanding of whether some of the things the Son of God did were true or not. Therefore, there was no need for anyone to preach or brainwash them. They naturally already my heart is set on the Son of God. Including those drowned people under his command, Zhogu thought to himself. As a person who came here more than 200 years ago, Zhogu firmly believed in the existence of gods. However, he had similar views to his rival Taller, the Sanyan man, and believed that gods could not have any sons. So in fact, he, the former leader of the followers of the Son of the drowned god, had already changed his mind after coming to the New World, and was ready to serve the great god devoutly. It was just that he changed his mind because of this, but his subordinates were still obsessed with it, or in other words, their unfulfilled ambitions in ancient times were still unquenched. So when the news came that the Son of the drowned god had appeared, I couldn't sit still at all. Zhou could not object to this, because he did not have such great prestige to completely suppress the ambitions of his subordinates, and speaking out against it would only make him lose support, so he could only be busy. Originally, he was very dissatisfied with this, but the son of the drowned god who he didn't want to welcome back did have some special powers. He could not only attract schools of fish, but also wake up drowned people. These are more bizarre powers than what King Rhodes had in the past, and Zhuge is also full of surprises, but if you say that alone, you can conclude that the child is the son of a god. He picked up the wheat tea on the small table in front of him and took a sip, shaking his head unconsciously. No matter what, this is a good thing for their goals. The more powerful the son of God is, the smoother their process of unifying the drowned class of the islands will be. So sometimes the truth is not that important. Look at the man in front of him named Sauron's cunning old guy knew this. He kept talking about the son of God. Before the son of God showed his power, didn't he want to control him? Seeing that the situation was not right later, Sauron changed his approach in time. However, judging from his decisive appearance, it is obvious that there is no piety at all. This hypocritical world. Zhou thought secretly. If the great drowned god is really watching them, then the first ones to be punished will probably be the hypocritical drowned gods who serve him. With this thought in mind, Zhou picked up the tea bowl and was about to take another sip of the light yet mellow wheat tea. However, before the tea bowl reached his mouth, he suddenly saw the small table in front of him and the person sitting opposite the small table. The old man suddenly shone brightly. No, it's not them. Seeing the horrified expression on the brightly illuminated face of the grey-haired drowned man, the young drowned man suddenly turned around and looked back. Then, he saw light, a lot of light. The light came from outside the tent, ignoring any obstructions, and glowed with a light blue light. This light seemed to be the rays of the sun hanging high in the sky, swaying slantingly, penetrating into the tight interior of the sealskin tent, turning into thousands of spots, covering the surrounding closed space, and rippling in a trance, like the arrival of the underwater world. However, the sky outside was not daytime at this time, and the sunlight was obviously not blue. The young drowned man suddenly thought of something and his heart tightened. He couldn't wait to get up and opened the tent door and looked out. Then he saw a scene he would never forget in his life. The light emerged from the top of the distant Naga hill and radiated in all directions, permeating everything and dispelling the endless darkness, like a bright blue sun rising slowly. And at the core of this bright light, a small but tall figure was clearly visible. In a trance, Zhou seemed to see God. Chapter 176. The dazzling blue light was not limited to the drowned people on the Holy Coast. Even the commoners and nobles on Old Wick Island could see it clearly or dimly after the light emerged. The obviously extraordinary phenomenon shocked many people who put on their clothes and hurried in that direction. Some ignorant people believed that some treasure might have fallen from the sky in that direction, but more people realized that the direction pointed to the Naga Hill where the Grey Sea King's Hall was located. And recently, the incident of the son of the drowned god over there has been making a big fuss. A large number of drowned people are gathering there, trying not to attract attention. Did they really perform some kind of miracle? In a castle tower, an old man looked over there and muttered to himself as he looked at the situation that was flickering like stars falling from the sky. After observing for a while, he resolutely turned around and walked towards the outside of the tower, deciding to take people to see the details. As the head of the Zhuge family on the island, and also the leader recognized by the other lords of Old Wake Island, the old man's traveling team was large, and members of several other major families gathered on the way, heading towards that place. Heading towards the sacred coast. They discussed this a lot on the way, and various speculations were constantly raised, but it was generally believed that the drowned men and their sons of the drowned god might have caused the noise. However, we still won't know the details until we get there. The light was very bright, so the closer they got to their destination, the clearer the road under their feet, and their speed was also fast. Unfortunately, the light quietly extinguished before they reached their destination. When the team finally passed through a pile of rocks and arrived at the sacred coast, they were directly stopped by the drowned people. This is Dunstan Zhuge, the head of the Zhuge family and the leader of the plunderers on Old Wake Island. Some retainers under his command came forward to negotiate, but the drowned people who blocked the team did not give this face. It involves the son of the drowned god. Even if King Balong comes, we can't let you in. One of the white-haired old drowned people said expressionlessly, "My lords, please come back. The drowned people have a special status in the Iron Islands. Although they do not hold power and have no soldiers, from the leaders of each island to the common people, every iron race needs to be polite to them and cannot offend them at will. Because what they represent behind them is the drowned god. What happened inside? A lord couldn't help but ask. We will tell you what you should know afterward. The old drowned man declared, and several other drowned men behind him were still blocking the way motionlessly. So many lords and nobles who came in a hurry looked at each other, and in the end they could only leave in despair. Their curiosity was not satisfied in the end, because the news that came out afterwards was only a few sentences, and it was mostly nonsense. The son of the drowned god communicated with the great drowned god, and performed miracles on the top of Naga Hill. No one knew what the miracle was. Later, when they were able to get closer to the Naga Hills, all they saw was the bare top of the hill. That's right, not only did they not see the miracle, but they also lost the remains of Naga. This situation made the noble class generally dissatisfied, but the drowned people remained silent about it and never revealed a single word. However, whenever they talked about this matter, their expressions looked fanatical. You are too presumptuous, Sauron. Under the sun, a skinny old drowned man pointed at the grey-haired old man opposite and cursed with dissatisfaction. You are the one who asked us to come to Old Wake Island to worship the Son of God, and you are the one who prevents us from seeing the Son of God. We've been here for 5 days and we haven't even seen what the Son of God looks like. What are you doing to exclude us? That is. A bald old drowned man next to him heard this and complained, we all know what you and that Jogu are planning. We have all agreed now. Yes, we agree, but you have to let us see our Son of God. Sir. Apart from anything else, I want to apologize to you personally, but now you don't even let me go. Do you want to kill me? These words made the grey-haired old man glance at this guy. He felt that this old guy was really thick-skinned. When he came here, he was just a little brat, but now he is like an adult. But thinking about the shocking scene that happened that night, it is completely normal to have such a change. What he was thinking did not affect his response. The grey-haired old man looked at the last person confronting him. Baron, you are a smart man. You should be able to understand that what I said is not a lie. It is indeed inconvenient for the Son of God to see people at the moment, and it is not that I have to stop you from seeing him. My lord, it is impossible to always be inconvenient. After hearing this, the blind man Baron, who opened his eyes and revealed a pair of grey pupils, said calmly, I am different from them. I just want to ask, when will it be convenient for Lord Son of God to see us who are devoted to our service? Servants. I need to ask. Saltung Sauron heard this and said, I will send someone to inform you of the results. That's what you said last time. The skinny old Yan man heard this and said dissatisfiedly, it was the same last time. Yes, I suspect you are lying to us. The bald-headed three-drowned man taller said angrily, actually, I didn't even ask. I certainly didn't ask. Saltung Sauron said expressionlessly, but it's not that I didn't ask, it's that I can't get close to you. You are joking. The skinny old man nicknamed Old Grey O.U. sneered, the gatekeepers are all your people, but you told me that you can't get close. That's right, they think we are fools. Thaler, the three-drowned man, echoed. They are indeed my people. Saltung Sauron said, with a hint of helplessness on his face. But now they obey the orders of the Son of God. This. After hearing this, the two people opposite couldn't help but look at each other. The tent made of fine sealskin looked strong and thick. At least, all the noise outside was blocked at this time. There were always people running over from outside the door wanting to enter the camp, but the drowned people guarding the door faithfully carried out the order given by their Lord Son of God before, that is, no one was allowed to disturb them. Anyone. Therefore, no matter the drowned leaders, ordinary drowned people, or even ordinary people who sneaked into the camp, they could not see the son of the drowned god who was becoming more and more mysterious on Old Wick Island, and even on the entire Iron Islands. People who could not see the shadow of the Son of God were not dissatisfied because of this. They generally believed that their sacred son of the drowned god might be busy with something important, such as communicating with his father. However, this was just people filling their own minds. In fact, Renly, the so-called Son of God, was not doing anything serious at this time, but was sleeping. Yes, sleep. In other words, he had just woken up and was sitting on the bedside rubbing his eyes. Standing on the top of Nanaga Hills for 3 days, constantly communicating with the inexplicable will, this process was very taxing on Renly, and even after it was over, he passed out without even having time to check the changes caused by it. It wasn't until after sleeping for a day and night that he woke up again, but he also felt very tired and weak. He couldn't help but yawn. So he basically spent the past 2 days eating, sleeping, and eating. It was only then that he felt mentally better, but he still had a faint headache. But this did not stop him from looking in the mirror. Products are scarce in the Iron Islands. The round mirror placed beside the bed was even brought by the drowned all the way from Great Wick Island, but it still didn't look like the ones he had in Highgarden or even Storm's End. Thorough, but this does not prevent Renly from observing himself, or in other words, observing the information emerging from the mirror. Racial level, LV3. Occupation, Bard, Entry, Knight, Entry. Professional characteristics, sensitivity to music, spirit in singing. Possess knowledge, Heraldry LV7, Swimming LV7, Archery LV5. Possess knowledge, Poison making LV5, Dagger mastery LV5, Etiquette LV3, Fishing LV2. LV1 skills are ignored. Derivative characteristics, Psychic crest, Valyrian bloodline, mutation, Curse of Ember, Son of the Warrior, Psychic word, Naga fire. Psychic language, you can feel the emotions transmitted by living beings, and you can also convey your own emotions through physical touch. Valyrian bloodline, mutation. The mutated Valyrian bloodline in your body has been strengthened again, your physique has been enhanced, and you have some mysterious qualities that come with the bloodline. When you are in the underwater world, you will feel tired and hungry, you have the ability to hallucinate and mimic, and your existence is very tempting to aquatic species. Naga fire will greatly inhibit the aging of your body, and your lifespan will be extraordinary. Raising the racial level brought about an all-round improvement in physical fitness. However, because he was relatively weak at this time, Renly could not detect his current physical condition, but he could clearly see the changes in his body's characteristics. The Valyrian blood mutated again, and it even seemed to allow him to become a tireless perpetual motion machine when in the ocean. The psychic language is no different from the ability he had explored before, but now he seems to be able to feel the emotions of creatures at will, instead of only doing it when the other party is eager for it. As for the final characteristics of Naga fire, Renly narrowed his eyes. The physical improvement is just a change along with the communication. In fact, the most important gain from this change is not the self, but an external object. If exposed, it is destined to cause chaos and turmoil. Foreign objects. Thinking about it, he looked away from the mirror in front of him and looked at his left wrist. The mark of chaos occupies the center of the wrist, the seed of the ancient path symbol is in the lower left corner of the mark, and in the upper right corner of the mark, a blue snake head with clear lines and vividness is quietly flashing. Or it is not the head of the snake, but the head of the sea dragon, the head of the sea dragon Naga. However, in fact, there is not much connection between this quietly emerging mark and Naga. Its appearance is like this, but the inner situation would be enough to shock anyone if told. What is sealed within this mark is a god. The Drowned God. Chapter 177. What are gods? As a modern man, Renly originally thought that the so-called gods might be some powerful beings with many abilities beyond ordinary cognition. They might exist by relying on the faith of mortals, spreading their own will in the secular world at will, or they might be independent and powerful individuals, living in a world invisible to ordinary people. He now believes that half of his cognition is correct, that is, gods rely on faith to exist, or there are indeed gods in this world that rely on faith to exist. But this kind of gods are not so great. Carefully considering the birth of gods, the process must be very complicated, but in general, Renly thinks it is very clear: believe, there is; do not believe, there is nothing. Under long-term worship, the so-called gods gather many human wills and are born. Renly does not know other gods, but this one on his wrist, or the drowned god of the Iron Islands, he knows clearly what this thing is. It is the drowned god, but it is also Naga, a primitive totem belief. That's right, the drowned god is the sea dragon Naga, the first sea dragon in the world, the most powerful creature born in the sea. It feeds on sea monsters and sea beasts, and can swallow the entire island when angry. In the story of the Iron Islands, Naga appeared as a villain. The first king of the islands, the Grey King, personally slaughtered it on Old Wick Island, and used its ribs to make beams and pillars, its mouth to make a throne, and its teeth to make a towering pale crown. Finally, the Grey King used the fire of Naga to warm his newly built new hall, and ruled the islands here for 1,000 years, and finally stepped into the sea. This story is talked about by countless iron races, and is also considered nonsense by many scholars, but in fact it is not a story, but a real thing. Renly could not determine the specific year and month of existence, but when communicating on the top of the hill, he saw with his own eyes the general process of the terrifying sea dragon Naga from being worshipped to being killed. Humans feared it, so they knelt down to worship it and offered sacrifices to it. As they worshipped it more, the so-called drowned god was born. Unfortunately, no one among the Ironborn understood that the faith in the drowned god, which they had inherited for thousands of years, had actually long been a degenerate and godless pseudo-god school. In other words, the drowned god they chanted day and night had long been killed by their first king, and the divinity that the drowned god had brewed by gathering many human beliefs, or the Naga fire in the story, was also extinguished. So the drowned god no longer existed, both physically and spiritually. But this non-existence was not complete, because the drowned god would not disappear completely until this belief was forgotten by humans. It's just that this non-disappearance is actually no different from the real disappearance. He lost his life and his spirituality, and he had become a mindless existence formed by the gathering of many beliefs and wills. What can this existence do? The facts of the Iron Islands for thousands of years have proved that he can do nothing, because he has become a dead water. It was not until Renly appeared that a ripple appeared in this dead water. Renly didn't understand why this ball of dead water would react to him. He guessed that it might be because of the chaotic mark on his left wrist, or that his spiritual heart characteristics were sensed by this ball of dead water, which gave him feedback, and then took him through a hazy memory flashback again. At the same time, he couldn't understand why the drowned god was resurrected on his wrist. That's right, resurrection. It wasn't a real resurrection, but at this moment, a wisp of Naga fire had been born in the blue mark on Renly's wrist, or a wisp of the divinity of the drowned god, which could burn out with just a slight touch. What can it do? Renly couldn't be sure, at least, he didn't think that this thing would continue to breed new seeds like the axe mark, because after a few days of observation, he found that this thing was slowly growing, instead of splitting new flames. At the same time, he could dig out this wisp of flame like the seed of the ancient road, but after digging it out, he could put it back. So Renly guessed that he seemed to, maybe use this thing to create a god? What's the use of this? Or, what's the use of creating a god? He was not sure. During the communication with Naga, he vaguely saw many terrifying scenes that made the sea water roar, but he was not sure whether it was the ability of the sea dragon itself or the power of the drowned god. Because there was only such a wisp of fire, Renly did not dare to try it casually. At the same time, he was not prepared to use this thing on himself, or he tried, but the fire could not be integrated into his body at all. Maybe this thing is also picky? Everything is unknown. Renly only knows that with the birth of this fire, his race level was incidentally raised by 1 level. There is not much information to explain the extra characteristics of the Naga fire, but referring to the stories and legends, it is very likely that he can live for hundreds or thousands of years. Not to mention the increase in race level, he suddenly changed from a mortal with a limited lifespan to an obviously inhuman existence. No one in the world can keep a normal mind for such an opportunity. Human beings' desire for immortality comes from the desire deep in life, and even many wise monarchs cannot avoid this desire. Now he has easily obtained it, which is obviously a good thing. However, Renly is still a little kid now and cannot feel the existence of aging. He does not feel that there is anything too surprising about this. In other words, for now, he pays more attention to the troubles that will follow after this fire is ignited. Thinking about this, the boy sitting on the bedside frowned. The birth of a god, or in other words, the resurrection of a god, obviously cannot be just the radiance on the surface. At the same time, this brand new fire is obviously some great treasure. It would be fine if no one knew about all this, but there was so much movement that day, and hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes saw the vast scene that was like the arrival of a god into the world. If all this spreads, Westeros is certainly a seemingly normal medieval world, but who knows what is hidden in this world? Could it be that you are the only one who knows it? We can't wait any longer according to the original plan, lest some evil spirits come to visit us. He thought. Leaving Old Wick Island or the Iron Islands is not a difficult thing for Renly at present, because many drowned people have begun to obey him unconditionally, but if he communicates this matter directly with the drowned people. Renly was a little hesitant about this, but that attitude had mostly disappeared that afternoon. Because the arrival of a visitor brings a better opportunity to the door. The visitor is Balong Greyjoy, King of the Iron Islands. Chapter 178. Balon Greyjoy, the King of the Iron Islands, is a thorough iron race, which can be seen from his personality and appearance. His black hair is mixed with a few strands of silver, his eyes are sharp and tenacious, and his thin and angular face makes him look particularly cold. Perhaps he did not make a big fuss this time. He was wearing an inconspicuous grey robe, and the outermost linen cloak wrapped around his thin body. When he stepped into the tent, he looked like a moving spear. This was not the first time Renly saw him, but last time he had no time to observe him carefully, and at the same time he was unstable. Unlike now, he not only had time to look at the Iron King who rebelled against his brother's rule, but was also not afraid of the commander rushing up. He even felt quite relaxed because he knew many of the thoughts of the man in front of him. The war failed. After the two sides met, Renly's first words made Balon Greyjoy pause, and then he sat on the chair and unconsciously paid more attention to the boy in front of him who looked very young. The Iron Fleet was led into a trap in the Fairy Island Strait. The River Fleet went north, and Stannis Baratheon went south from behind. The two sides attacked and our army was defeated. The tone was still calm and there was no sense of urgency, as if he was talking about something very normal. However, the meaning behind this sentence made Balon unconsciously hold the wine glass in his hand that was offered by the drowned man. The biggest reliance of the Iron Islands in this rebellion is naturally their excellent and huge fleet, and the cruel but kind sea to the Ironmen. The sea is my moat, and it will bury the enemy who dares to invade. When the Lannister fleet was burned in one fell swoop, Balon Greyjoy declared so. He believed that relying on this moat, even if Westeros had sufficient logistical supplies and manpower, the Iron Islands could still win. However, the war situation not long ago dealt him a heavy blow. The Iron Fleet, which was formed by the strength of the entire island, was defeated, and there were only a few survivors. The maritime power of the Iron Islands was basically abolished. It would take at least 7 or 8 years to recover. Not only that, without the fleet, his moat can now be passed through by the enemy at will. At present, nothing can be seen, but in the near future, Westeros' enemies will inevitably emerge from the end of the vast ocean and land on the islands. Attack, defense, familiarity, unfamiliarity. After the fleet was abolished, the Ironmen directly became the defenders. The geographical advantages and human harmony brought by defending their homes have certain advantages, but if the strength of the two sides is very different, then this defense is doomed to fail even though the defensive war has not yet begun. When Balon learned that the fleet was defeated, he had already recognized this, and he had no way to deal with it. Because this is a hard power gap. Without the advantage of the ocean, they simply cannot confront the united behemoth. He was deeply powerless about this. Even after the news came back that day, he stayed in the room without drinking a drop of water for a whole night, thinking about the war, thinking about the future, and thinking about how to recover a little disadvantage. He couldn't think of any way, but he had a few more strands of white hair. So when he heard that the miracle suddenly appeared on Old Wake Island, he took a boat and ran here directly, hoping that the boy in front of him could bring some miracles. The first sentence at the beginning made Baron more confident, because although the result of the war had appeared, the news had not actually spread, and the other party was able to know this now, obviously not by ordinary means. If he had other unique powers. However, the next sentence of the Son of God in front of him made Baron's heart sink to the bottom of the valley. I can't change the result that has already happened, and I can't influence the war that will invade soon. The childish voice answered his thoughts in his heart as if he had predicted the future, and the tone was full of solemnity. An elephant can easily crush a hound to death, but it can do nothing to an ant crawling on it. The power of the gods can do many things beyond the imagination of ordinary people, but there are also many limitations. Otherwise, the great drowned god would have let the Iron Islands conquer the entire Westeros long ago. This decisive refusal disappointed Balon, but it seemed to be true when he thought about it. However, even the gods can't do anything about it, what else can they do? Balon didn't think about it, because it would only make him more powerless, and he didn't plan to stay here any longer. Although he still had many doubts in his heart, it didn't matter now. He thought that when the army of Westeros arrived, it would be the time of his death. I was going to die, so what doubts were worth paying attention to? So less than 2 minutes after entering the tent, he stood up happily, bowed slightly to the boy and was about to turn around and leave, but the other party's next sentence made him pause. You won't die. Baratheon won't let you die. This statement suddenly sounded a bit strange, because Balon had never said such words before. However, Balan was quite familiar with the mysterious Son of God who seemed to be able to see through people's hearts, so he was not surprised. However, he did not agree with this statement itself. I am the initiator of the rebellion, and I even deceived the Green King on the Iron Throne with a trick. If I don't die, how can this rebellion be quelled? The Iron Throne is the Iron Throne, and Baratheon is Baratheon. The words of the Son of God made Balan's mind move, and then he sat back and listened quietly. As a unified king, you, the one who started the rebellion, deserve to die. Renly said, but just as you guessed when you started the rebellion, do you think King Robert's throne is stable? Balan thought for a while after hearing this, and said, Baratheon sat on the Iron Throne relying on the alliance with the north, the river and the valley, but this alliance itself is not perfect. The Tully family has the control of the Riverlands is weak. During the Usurpers' Rebellion, not many Riverlands lords gathered to participate in the war, and a few even sided with the Targaryens. The Northland was vast, but the population was sparse and the mobilization capacity was insufficient. The Lynn family is stronger than the two, but not by much. However, the decision to marry the Lannister is very wise. The Lannister has a strong control over the West, and the combined efforts of other families are enough to stabilize the usurpers but Iron Chair but the relationship between the two families is not so much the marriage as the next generation heir to the Iron Throne, so until this heir appears, the usurper's throne cannot be said to be stable. As he spoke, he sighed. I originally thought that the Reach would not respond to the usurper's call, or even if it responded, it would not be so active. Wouldn't it be more beneficial to them to let our Iron Islands fleet weaken the power of the Westerland and the usurper? He seemed a little confused about this, but Renly had no intention of discussing this topic. After hearing this, he concluded, so Robert the usurper nominally rules the entire Westeros, but in fact he has no control over the major territories under his command. Control there is almost no power, whether it is the West or the Reach. That's right. Baron nodded. So, for the Riverlands and the Westerlands, is the existence of the Iron Islands good or bad? Renly reminded him, for the Stormlands and the Crown, which are controlled by Baratheon, the existence of the Iron Islands is also good or bad. What's the impact? The latter problem is very simple and has no impact, because the two territories of Stormland and Kingsland are completely incompatible with the Iron Islands, but the former problem is more obvious and is naturally bad. The three parties face each other across the sea and have been feuding with each other for thousands of years. Balan understood something after hearing this, but he still did not have the confidence to survive this war. The usurper certainly needs the existence of the Iron Islands, but it is limited to the Iron Islands. But if the Iron Islands are a piece of scattered sand, what's the point of him wanting the Iron Islands? Renly asked back, and who can be more qualified than you, the king of the Iron Islands who has a higher prestige and has been conquered by him once? Kind of expectation. This is just some consideration. Balon Greyjoy shook his head. Not long after he ascended the throne, I started a rebellion. If he doesn't deal with me, what will others think? In the early days of the Targaryen rebellion, three noble families in the Stormlands stood on the opposite side of the usurper and opposed his lord. After being defeated, the usurper did not chop off the heads of the leading nobles, but reused them. Renly said, you can't look at King Baratheon with ordinary thinking. He is more like a warrior than a king. At the same time, one factor is very beneficial to you, that is, you have not worshipped. The Lothian dynasty has sworn allegiance, and in a sense, you are still on the Targaryen side. These words made Balan thoughtful, so, this war is not a rebellion. It seemed very strange for the initiator of the war to say this, but neither side felt strange at all. Renly nodded when he heard this, so I said that you will not die, or that you have the possibility of surviving. After pondering this matter carefully, Baron pursed his lips unconsciously, but then the other person's words attracted his attention. Then what happens after you survive? What should you do after surviving? Chapter 179. From the current war to past history, from the establishment of the Targaryen dynasty to the results of each war launched by the Iron Islands in the past 300 years, from the resources of the islands to geographical and economic issues. The conversation in the sealskin tent lasted for a long time, until the sky darkened, and Balon Greyjoy, the king of the Iron Islands, opened the tent and walked out. After taking a deep breath of the air with the smell of the sea, he turned and bowed to the tent, and then walked away with a hurried step. Renly in the tent didn't care much about this after all, he just wanted the Iron Islands to be more honest and submissive, and not to go out and rob all day long. However, the premise of this honesty is naturally to be able to eat well and wear warm clothes, so he gave a few suggestions by the way. Thinking about it, Renly took a sip of the wheat tea in the cup, his expression thoughtful. The previous conversation was not entirely about the Iron Islands. Later, Balon also mentioned a personal confusion with him, that is, the blessing of the power of the drowned god. That is, the seed of the ancient road in Balon's body. A rebellion to restore the ancient road seemed to provide a lot of nutrients to the seeds in Baron's body, so that in addition to the feedback power, it also bred a new ability, or in other words, it made Baron's body change a little bit. Something similar to webbed feet grew between his toes. This situation surprised Renly very much, but he had no idea about it. At the same time, in order to keep it mysterious, he did not dare to look at it more, but just claimed that this situation was a normal phenomenon. So Baron was relieved. However, he was relieved, but Renly could not ignore the emergence of this phenomenon. He suspected that it was because of the feedback of the seeds of the ancient road that Baron's body had a reversion phenomenon. Although in his memory, people were all transformed from monkeys, but there was no such saying in this world. In other words, on many islands in this world, there are legends that the local Icelanders have mermaid blood. Renly even heard that many people in the Three Sisters Islands of the valley have webbed feet and hands. I don't know if it's the same thing as Baron. Thinking about it, he shook his head and got up to pack up. Proposing suggestions was just a side job. The main result of his conversation was that a ship would quietly dock tonight, and Renly would take that ship to Westeros. That's right, he was going to leave tonight. Renly had no attachment to the identity of the son of the drowned god, and he would not stay any longer if he could leave earlier. Although Balon Greyjoy was puzzled by the idea of the son of the drowned god secretly leaving the Iron Islands, he still decided to help. On the one hand, Balon did not think that the Son of God did not know that he was the Son of God as the drowned people did before. Or Balon thought that the Son of God was the Son of God, and even if he left the Iron Islands, he still could not hide this fact, so what was the problem of leaving the islands temporarily? Anyway, the son of the drowned god would always return to the Iron Islands. After all, the Iron Islands were the only ones in the world who believed in the drowned god. How far could he, the Son of God, go even if he left? On the other hand, although he welcomed the existence of the son of the drowned god, he obviously did not want any son of God King to appear in the islands. It is enough for the Iron Islands to have one leader, but the drowned men want to create another one. What are they going to do? Seize power? Want to restore the short-lived drowned kingdom 300 years ago? In a sense, Balon is on a united front with Renly, so he agreed to send a ship to pick up Renly and send him to Westeros. At the same time, although he was curious about why the Son of God wanted to go to the Green Land that was not under the jurisdiction of the drowned god, he did not ask more questions when Renly did not explain. There must be a reason, which may involve gods. It is better for him, a mortal, not to get involved in such things rashly. After all, his own affairs are in a mess and he can't manage them. Of course, Balon still asked whether he needed him to send people to follow him, but Renly refused. However, he readily accepted the claim that he would provide him with some money necessary for walking in the human world. It's a pity that I can't get it all in one go. In the tent, after packing up all his things, Renly sighed secretly. The defeat in the naval war caused the Iron Islands to completely lose control of the sea area south of the islands. Now the southern sea area is full of enemies, and the ships of the Iron Islands dare not pass through there, so they can only send Renly to the sea bordering the north of the islands, either the north or the Riverlands. Needless to say, the north is the farthest place from Highgarden. It is already winter now, and it is estimated that it will be freezing cold there, so the only choice is the Riverlands. This is quite troublesome, because he still has to travel a long way after arriving in the Riverlands. Renly hesitated for a while because in addition to letting the people of the Iron Islands send him away, he can actually wait until his cheap brother Robert arrives in the Iron Islands and directly join the friendly forces. In fact, this is what he originally planned. It's just that war is simple to say, but it is very troublesome to mobilize in practice. Even if the naval power of the Iron Islands is abolished now, it will probably take a long time for them to reach the islands. And if he really did that, he couldn't explain why he was here, and as the son of the drowned god, who was very popular in the archipelago, anyone with a keen eye could easily find out what Renly had done here, and then. So Renly decided to leave tonight. In fact, he has nothing to deal with. The main thing is himself. The secondary ones are 4 shells containing the seeds of the ancient path, A bronze ring with 3 uses left, and an air cat that has been harassing him recently. A few ordinary winter clothes prepared by the flooded people. After all, that's all. After roughing up his bag, he pretended to sleep and extinguished the brazier in the tent, and lay in bed for a long time. It was not until almost midnight, when it became quite quiet outside, that Renly left a line of words on the surface, and then he opened a loose corner of a tent that had been reserved before and hurried towards the coastline not far away under the cover of night when no one noticed. There were night watch drowned men around the beach, but these drowned men obviously had no relevant experience. They were illuminated by bonfires at night, which greatly affected their vision, so their sight of the dark land seemed quite blurry. In addition, Renly had an escape plan and had a clear understanding of the distribution of the drowned people watching the night, so although the process was not smooth, he finally succeeded in reaching the end of the coast. However, before Renly could take off his upper body clothes and jump into the sea, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Looking back, a thin and drowned figure came into view. Ryan. Renly narrowed his eyes. Where do you want to go, Lord Son of God? The other party asked softly as he approached. An ordinary and slender face looked hazy and illusory under the cover of the dark night. Instead of asking me where I want to go, Renly said, sitting cross-legged on a rock beneath him. Why don't we discuss how you came here? I heard some noise, so. As far as I know, you are not on duty outside my camp tonight. Renly interrupted with a sneer, don't tell me you happened to get up to pee. No peeing. The thin drowned man replied in a low voice, I just can't sleep a little bit. Really? Renly was non-committal, and then asked suddenly. Who are you? I'm Ryan, You're not Ryan. Renly interrupted, you claim to be from Lone Light Island, but I sent people to investigate there and found that there is no such person as Ryan on Lone Light Island, so, who are you? What is your purpose? The other party was silent after hearing this. There are only 2 chapters today, friends. I didn't mean to break the chapter. I actually went to the dentist yesterday and didn't write the 3rd chapter. To be honest, I still have to go to the dentist today, but I will try my best to update it tomorrow. Chapter 180. At the edge of the wet and cold beach at midnight, the atmosphere remained dull. The boy sitting on the rock just stared at the tall and thin drowned man standing not far away, and the other person was also looking at him motionless at this time, with a blank expression. Judging from your behavior, you're watching me. After a moment of silence, seeing that the other party had no intention of speaking, Renly added, and this kind of observation is completely different from that of the drowned people. At the same time, before being found by the drowned people, I was once followed by a silver-haired woman. That's what they said. Renly paid close attention to the expression of the woman in front of him when he mentioned the silver-haired woman, but still didn't see anything. Both that woman and you seem to be able to find exactly where I am. Renly said, raising his hand to grab something in the air, and frowning as if he had caught something. I could probably guess it was the cat because nothing like this had ever happened before. The air cat in his hand obviously didn't understand his identity as a traitor. After being caught, he still swayed and put his fleshy paw on Renly's arm to show his closeness. So Renly let go of his hand and stopped caring about it. So I initially thought that you and the silver-haired woman were together to observe me. Therefore, you couldn't let me leave the Iron Islands easily, so the group of drowned people came to the door, but... He paused for a moment while his fingers fiddled with the bronze ring hanging around his neck as if unintentionally. Later I discovered that maybe you are not 2 people, but 1. These words finally made the other party's expression react, and he seemed a little surprised for a moment. Women and men seem to be 2 people, why can't they be 1? Renly on the side said to himself, you never participated when the drowned people bathed in the sea, and no one saw you peeing in front of others. And since you appeared, the woman has disappeared without a trace. Come on, are you a faceless person? Can you change your appearance at will? That's all. The other party asked, his voice becoming hoarse, just based on these, do you think I'm a woman? Of course more than that. Renly smiled and said, but I can't tell you the rest. It's a secret. Is it a secret? The other party murmured in a complicated tone, you have so many secrets. The emotion of these words was obviously a bit abnormal. At the same time, due to some of his newly evolved characteristics, Renly felt a faint sadness, which made him frown involuntarily, but then he didn't need to consider whether this emotion was why. Because the other party has already taken action. He saw the tall and thin Ryan standing there suddenly raising his hand to touch his left cheek, and then under Renly's unsurprising gaze, he pinched the edge of his cheek with his fingers and lifted it outward. A soft flesh-colored mask was held in the opponent's hand, and the face under the mask had become very beautiful. Because the sky was dark, Renly didn't feel anything special at first, but after taking a closer look at the slim and graceful woman not far away, his originally calm expression was startled unconsciously, and then his pupils suddenly shrank. You. She has a smooth forehead, delicate facial features, and long black hair that is constantly blowing in the sea breeze, which makes her look a little different, but her oval face is quite familiar to Renly. Rena's. The boy's surprised voice made the woman not far away smile, but she did not stop. She raised her right hand and tugged on her fair neck, while looking at Renly with interest. A silver necklace was pulled off by her, and her beautiful face was in a daze for a moment, and then suddenly disappeared, or in other words, half of it suddenly disappeared. Under the cold wind at night, half of the face of the slender figure standing on the beach was still delicate and white, and the way her hair was ruffling looked very moving, but now there was a tangled and ugly burn scar on her right cheek, which was connected to her eyebrows. It was there, down to the edge of her lips, setting off the beautiful left half of her cheek, like a combination of angel and devil, looking so weird and disharmonious. Haven't seen you for a long time. She finally spoke, her voice still hoarse, but there was no trace of the smile she once had in her tone. Countless questions came to his mind in an instant, but he didn't know where to start. After a moment of silence, Renly couldn't help but said, "Didn't you already? Already dead?" The woman smiled lightly, "You are so smart, you should be able to guess what the truth is." "That's Sister Ada," Renly said while looking at the mask in his hand. "That's right. Then your face accidentally burned." The woman touched the right side of her face and smiled nonchalantly. "After so many years, I have become accustomed to it," she said, looking around Renly's current childish appearance with interest. "Is this your other identity? Or is it the real you?" "It's another identity, but it's also me," Renly answered hesitantly, and then glanced at the mask floating in the wind in the other person's hand. "How did you become the Faceless One?" "I learned it while traveling in the Free Trade City. This ability is very useful," the woman said, and put the necklace in her hand back around her neck, so the right half of her face that originally looked rather ugly quietly changed, and finally harmony with the one on the left. "I also learned a little bit of magic. Free cities, faceless men." Renly's mind was complicated when he heard this, but he didn't think about it too much, because he was still confused. "How did you find me? And how old are you? You said your name was Renly in the Dorne Desert. This name is rare, so I was able to find you. At the same time, I think you know better than me why I am here." Rennis whispered, "As for my appearance, I don't know why I have changed back to this appearance now. I only know that it is related to Rhea. At the beginning, I led the dragon away for revenge. I wanted to put the blame on my sister, but I didn't want to stimulate Rhea, and then everything changed. Sorry, I didn't know it was you at that time." She looked both apologetic and quite calm, which made Renly not know what to say. "Blame? Don't blame those who don't know, and it's still an acquaintance of his, an acquaintance who resurrected from the dead. To be honest, he still feels quite happy now. Don't take it seriously. Burned to death alive, only those who know the pain will know. And there is." "What happened next?" Renly suddenly asked, "What happened next? You want to ask about Rhea?" Rennis asked, and when she saw Renly nod, she seemed a little hesitant and a little sad. "I'm not sure about Rhea, but I think she may have died." "Dead?" Renly was stunned when he heard this.